Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Super Harry. We are thrilled to present today's story, What If Harry's Magic Violently Rejected Ginny's Kiss and Showed Everyone in Common Room She'd Dosed Him 340 Times. If these stories bring joy to your day, please consider liking and subscribing. Every bit of support helps us continue this passion project. Now, prepare yourself for an amazing tale. Chapter 1. The Violent Truth. The Gryffindor common room blazed with crimson and gold, a cacophony of celebration drowning out the howling November wind rattling the tower windows. Butterbeer flowed freely, music pulsed from an enchanted gramophone in the corner, and the victorious Quidditch team members were being passed overhead like conquering heroes. Harry Potter, still in his mud-splattered uniform, found himself deposited unceremoniously onto a threadbare sofa, his protests lost amid the thunderous chanting. Potter. 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 His spectacular dive for the snitch, barely escaping a bludger that would have shattered his shoulder, had sealed Gryffindor's victory over Slytherin by a margin that would be discussed for weeks. Even McGonagall had permitted herself a rare smile when presenting the team with congratulatory butterbeers after the match. Brilliant catch, Harry. Dean Thomas shouted over the noise, sloshing his drink as he gestured wildly. Never seen Malfoy look so constipated. Harry grinned, running a hand through his windswept hair. Thanks. Thought I'd miss it when that bludger came at me. Never doubted you for a second, Ron declared, dropping onto the sofa beside Harry. His freckled face was flushed with excitement and butterbeer. Even when you were hanging by one hand, I told Hermione, he's got this. From her perch on a nearby armchair, Hermione rolled her eyes affectionately. What you actually said was considerably less printable, Ronald. Harry laughed, the tension from the match finally draining from his muscles. These moments, surrounded by friends, basking in simple joys, made everything else worthwhile. For a precious few hours, there were no prophecies, no dark lords, no mounting pressure of being the boy who lived. Just Quidditch, friends, and the warm embrace of Gryffindor Tower. Yet something nagged at the edges of his consciousness. A strange discomfort that had been growing for weeks now. An odd fogginess that descended at irregular intervals, followed by inexplicable decisions and feelings that, in retrospect, didn't quite feel like his own. He'd mentioned it to Hermione once, but she'd attributed it to stress and lack of sleep from their sixth-year workload. Perhaps she was right. Harry. Seamus appeared, offering a fresh butterbeer. The hero deserves a proper drink. Thanks, Harry accepted the bottle gratefully. The sweet, buttery liquid warmed him from the inside, yet that strange uneasiness persisted. He glanced around the common room, trying to shake it off. Across the room, Ginny Weasley stood surrounded by a group of fifth-year girls, her copper hair catching the firelight. She'd played brilliantly as chaser, scoring 8 of their 15 goals. As if sensing his gaze, she turned and caught his eye. A slow smile spread across her face as she excused herself from her friends and began weaving through the crowd toward him. Harry felt a peculiar lurch in his stomach, part anticipation, part unease. His relationship with Ginny had developed so suddenly it sometimes left him disoriented. One moment she was Ron's little sister, barely able to speak in his presence, the next, they were somehow together, his thoughts constantly drifting to her in a way that felt almost compulsive. There's my star seeker, Ginny said, perching on the armrest beside him. Her flowery scent enveloped him, triggering an immediate response. His heart raced, his palms grew damp, and yet something felt wrong. Artificial. Like watching himself from a distance. You were amazing out there, Harry replied, the words coming automatically. Those goals against Harper were incredible. Ginny beamed, leaning closer. We make quite the team, don't we? Before Harry could respond, Colin Creevey bounced up, camera in hand. Can I get a picture of the 2 star players? For the Gryffindor newsletter. Of course, Ginny answered, sliding down onto the sofa proper and pressing against Harry's side. Harry doesn't mind, do you, Harry? He didn't, not really, yet that strange disconnection intensified. As Colin raised his camera, Ginny's arms snaked around Harry's waist, warm and possessive. "Perfect!" Colin exclaimed after the flash. "One more. Maybe something more, you know." He made a vague gesture that clearly suggested romance. Harry opened his mouth to decline, but Ginny was already moving, turning toward him, her expression shifting to something calculated beneath the affection. "Give them something to talk about, shall we?" she whispered, and before Harry could process her words, she was kissing him, deeply and publicly. The moment her lips touched his, something inside Harry, something fundamental and magical, recoiled in violent rejection. A pulse of raw magic exploded outward from Harry's core, lifting Ginny bodily away from him and suspending her 3 feet in the air. The common room fell instantly silent as every eye turned to the spectacle. Harry himself remained seated, his green eyes wide with shock, a golden aura of visible magic surrounding him in pulsating waves. "Harry?" Hermione's voice cut through the silence, concern and confusion evident. "What's happening?" Before he could answer, tendrils of his golden magic reached toward Ginny, who hung suspended and struggling. Where the magic touched her, it changed color, becoming a sickly purple that extracted what looked like memories from her very pores. These purple wisps coalesced in the air between them, forming rapidly shifting scenes visible to everyone in the stunned common room. Ginny in the Hogwarts kitchens, slipping something into a pumpkin juice destined for Harry's breakfast. Ginny in an abandoned classroom, brewing a pearly potion with intense concentration. Ginny adding drops to Harry's tea when his back was turned. Ginny consulting a worn journal, pages covered with potion recipes and dates, hundreds of dates. As each memory materialized, ghostly numbers appeared beside them, 1, 2, 3. The count rose rapidly, scenes flashing faster and faster until it finally stopped at 340. 340, Hermione whispered, horror dawning on her face. "Oh my God, Harry!" The silence shattered as Ginny fell to the floor with a thud, the golden aura around Harry intensifying. His face had gone deathly pale, his breathing shallow and rapid. "Love potions," Neville said into the silence, his voice uncharacteristically hard. "She's been giving him love potions." The accusation triggered immediate chaos. Ron lunged forward, his face contorted in disbelief. "That's mental." Ginny wouldn't, his protest died as his eyes fell on his sister, who wasn't denying anything. Instead, she was scrambling to her feet, her expression calculating rather than ashamed. "It was just a bit of fun at first," Ginny said, her voice steady despite the situation. "Everyone does it. Mom told me how she used them on Dad when they were at school. It's tradition." A collective gasp rippled through the room at this casual admission. Hermione had already moved to Harry's side, her wand out as she cast diagnostic spells. "Harry," she asked gently. "Can you hear me?" Harry could hear her, but speaking felt impossible. The fog that had intermittently clouded his mind for months was lifting, but in its place came a crushing clarity that threatened to overwhelm him. Every false emotion, every manufactured desire, every moment of artificial affection crashed into his consciousness at once. His magic continued to pulse erratically, responding to his distress. "His system is purging the potions," Hermione announced, her voice clinical despite the fury evident in her eyes. 340 doses, it's a miracle he's alive." Dean Thomas stepped forward, his face dark with anger. "That's not a bit of fun, Ginny. That's assault." "Don't be dramatic," Ginny scoffed, though her eyes darted nervously to the exit. "It's just a love potion. It's not like I used Imperio." "It's exactly like that," Hermione snapped, not looking away from Harry. "Love potions override consent and free will. They're essentially the liquid form of the Imperio's curse, just socially acceptable because of outdated wizarding traditions that treat women as prizes to be won through any means necessary." Ron had gone pale beneath his freckles, torn between loyalty to his sister and his best friend. "Ginny," he said hoarsely, "tell me you didn't really do this." Not hundreds of times." Before Ginny could respond, Harry made a strangled sound. The golden aura around him flared brilliantly before collapsing inward. His eyes rolled back, and he slumped against Hermione, unconscious. "Harry!" Hermione cried, struggling to support his dead weight. "We need to get him to the hospital wing now." Neville and Dean immediately moved to help, lifting Harry between them. As they maneuvered toward the portrait hole, students parted silently, shock and horror evident on their faces. Ron stood frozen, his gaze alternating between his unconscious friend and his sister. "Ron," Hermione called sharply. "Are you coming?" The question seemed to carry more weight than just accompanying Harry to the hospital wing. It was a choice, Harry or Ginny, and in that moment, Ron's hesitation spoke volumes. He began, still looking between them. "Never mind," Hermione said coldly. "Lavender, go find Professor McGonagall immediately. Tell her what happened and that we need Madame Pomfrey to prepare for severe magical shock and long-term potion detoxification." Lavender nodded grimly and darted through the portrait hole ahead of them. As they carried Harry out, Hermione glanced back at the common room. Ginny stood defiantly amid a circle of stunned, horrified Gryffindors, her chin raised despite the damning evidence still swirling in ghostly purple above her head. Ron remained frozen in indecision, his face a mask of conflicted loyalty. "You need to secure those memories," Hermione instructed Parvati. "They're evidence. Don't let anyone dispel them." With that final command, she followed Harry's unconscious form through the portrait hole, her mind already racing through everything she knew about love potions and their effects. One thought hammered repeatedly through her consciousness: how had she missed this happening to her best friend, right under her nose, for what must have been months? The journey to the hospital wing seemed both instantaneous and eternal. Professor McGonagall intercepted them halfway, her face grave as Lavender finished explaining the situation. The Transfiguration Professor's lips thinned to nearly invisible as she took in Harry's unconscious form. "Mr. Longbottom, Mr. Thomas, continue to the hospital wing with Mr. Potter," she instructed. "Miss Granger, a brief word." As the boys continued on with Harry, McGonagall pulled Hermione aside, her voice low and urgent. Miss Brown's explanation was somewhat hysterical. "What precisely happened?" Hermione took a steadying breath. "Ginny Weasley kissed Harry during the Quidditch celebration, and his magic violently rejected it. It somehow extracted memories from her, showing everyone that she's been dosing him with love potions. 340 times, Professor." McGonagall's face drained of color. 300 and, she cut herself off, years of professional composure reasserting themselves. "Are you certain of this number?" "The memories were counting themselves," Hermione explained. "And they showed her brewing potions, adding them to his food and drinks. She admitted it, Professor. Said it was just a bit of fun and that Mrs. Weasley told her it was tradition, that she'd done the same to Mr. Weasley." Something dangerous flashed in McGonagall's eyes. "I see. Go to Mr. Potter. I will handle Miss Weasley and contact the appropriate authorities. This goes far beyond school discipline." Hermione hesitated. "Professor. Harry's magic. I've never seen anything like it. It was visible, golden light all around him. Is he going to be all right?" McGonagall's expression softened marginally. "Magic sometimes intervenes when a witch or wizard has been grievously wronged, Miss Granger. It is rare but not unheard of. Particularly for someone as naturally powerful as Potter." She gestured down the corridor. "Go. He will need a true friend when he wakes." The emphasis on "true" wasn't lost on Hermione. With a nod, she hurried after the others, leaving McGonagall to stride purposefully toward Gryffindor Tower, her wand already in hand. The hospital wing was brightly lit despite the late hour, Madame Pomfrey having been alerted to the emergency. Harry lay on a bed surrounded by monitoring charms, his skin ashen except for 2 bright spots of color high on his cheeks. Neville and Dean stood awkwardly by the door, clearly unsure if they should stay. Thank you both, Hermione said quietly. You should go back. I'm sure Professor McGonagall will want statements. Dean nodded grimly. Will he be okay? I don't know, Hermione admitted. Love potions aren't meant to be used repeatedly over long periods. The magical and psychological effects. It's criminal, Neville said, his voice uncharacteristically hard. My Gran sits on the Wisengamot. Love potions might be sold as jokes, but prolonged use is classified as a form of magical coercion. It carries serious penalties. Hermione looked at Neville with newfound respect. I hope so. This can't be swept under the rug. After the boys left, Hermione approached Madame Pomfrey, who was running complicated diagnostic spells over Harry's still form. How bad is it? Hermione asked softly. The matron's face was grave. In all my years at Hogwarts, I have never seen such systematic potion abuse. His system is saturated. From the magical signature, it appears to be primarily Amortentia, the most powerful love potion in existence. Miss Weasley must have access to sophisticated brewing skills to produce it successfully. Hermione felt sick. Amortentia is covered in Slughorn's advanced class. She must have gotten the recipe from there or... A terrible thought occurred to her. Or from her mother. Madame Pomfrey's lips thinned. Indeed. The pattern suggests regular dosing for at least 7 months, with increased frequency over time. His magic has been fighting it, which explains certain incidents of accidental magic reported this term. Hermione thought back to strange occurrences, goblets that shattered when Ginny handed them to Harry, a bench that had splintered beneath them in the Great Hall, the time Harry's broom had bucked unexpectedly when Ginny tried to join him for a ride. His magic was trying to protect him, she whispered. Precisely. Tonight's reaction was the culmination, his core finally gathered enough strength to purge the foreign substance entirely. Pomfrey gestured to the monitoring charms, which showed Harry's magical core pulsing erratically. The process is ongoing. It will be painful when he wakes. Can I stay with him? Hermione asked, already pulling a chair closer to the bed. Pomfrey nodded. I believe that would be wise, Miss Granger. When he regains consciousness, he will need a familiar face, one he can trust implicitly. The psychological effects of such betrayal can be as damaging as the physical ones. Will he remember everything? From when he was under the influence? Yes, but with clarity he didn't possess at the time. Imagine watching yourself perform actions, feel emotions, and make decisions while knowing they weren't truly yours. It can be deeply disorienting and traumatic. Hermione swallowed hard, taking Harry's limp hand in hers. His skin felt unnaturally hot, as though his very blood was fighting the foreign substances it had been forced to carry. I should have noticed, she said quietly. I'm supposed to be his best friend. Madame Pomfrey's expression softened. Love potions are insidious precisely because they create behaviors that seem plausible, Miss Granger. Mr. Potter's interest in Miss Weasley wouldn't have seemed extraordinary to observers, just another teenage romance. Before Hermione could respond, the hospital wing doors opened to admit Professor Dumbledore, his expression grave beneath his half-moon spectacles. He approached Harry's bed with none of his usual twinkling good humor. Poppy, Miss Granger, he greeted them solemnly. Professor McGonagall has informed me of tonight's disturbing events. Headmaster, Madame Pomfrey acknowledged. I was just explaining to Miss Granger the extent of the situation. Mr. Potter has been systematically dosed with Amortentia for months. The magical rejection we witnessed tonight was his core finally fighting back. Dumbledore's ancient face seemed to age further as he gazed down at Harry. I feared as much. Professor McGonagall has secured Miss Weasley in her office and contacted both the Weasley parents and the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. This matter goes beyond school discipline. Sir, Hermione began hesitantly. Ginny said her mother told her this was normal. That Mrs. Weasley did the same to Mr. Weasley. Something dangerous flashed in Dumbledore's blue eyes. The cultural attitudes surrounding love potions in our world have long been problematic, Miss Granger. What might be considered a youthful indiscretion, a single dose to attract attention, is worlds away from systematic, long-term potioning. He shook his head. If Molly Weasley indeed encouraged such behavior, she will face serious questions as well. A low moan from the bed drew their attention. Harry's eyelids were fluttering, his face contorted in pain. "He's coming around," Madame Pomfrey said, casting another diagnostic spell. "The purge is nearly complete, but this stage will be difficult." Harry's eyes snapped open, brilliant green and filled with confusion that rapidly morphed into horror as awareness returned. He tried to sit up, his breath coming in rapid, shallow gasps. "Harry, it's all right," Hermione said urgently, squeezing his hand. "You're in the hospital wing. You're safe." His gaze found hers, desperate for an anchor amidst what must be a storm of conflicting memories and emotions. "Hermione?" His voice was raw, as though he'd been screaming for hours. What happened?" "I remember Ginny, and then." "Your magic rejected her," Hermione explained gently. "It revealed that she's been giving you love potions, Harry. A lot of them." Harry's face drained of what little color it had. "Love potions," he repeated hollowly. "That's why everything felt so wrong. So foggy. I thought I was going crazy." His free hand clenched into a fist. "Every time I tried to think clearly about her, something would push me back toward her." Dumbledore stepped forward, his face solemn. "Harry, I must ask you something important. When did you first notice these symptoms?" Harry's brow furrowed in concentration. "After Christmas, I think. When we came back from the Burrow. I suddenly couldn't stop thinking about her, but it felt mechanical. Like thoughts being inserted into my head." His expression darkened. "Every time it started to fade, something would happen, a drink from her, a treat she'd give me. And then the fog would come back stronger." 7 months, Madame Pomfrey confirmed grimly. "Consistent with my findings. Miss Weasley will face serious consequences for her actions," Dumbledore assured him. "The DMLE has been contacted." Harry nodded numbly, then suddenly lurched forward, retching violently. Madame Pomfrey conjured a basin just in time, and everyone winced at the pearlescent, sweet-smelling liquid that emerged. "The final purge," Pomfrey explained, vanishing the contents of the basin. "Your magic is expelling the last traces, Mr. Potter." Harry fell back against the pillows, trembling uncontrollably. "What about Ron?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "He's my best friend, but Ginny is his sister." Hermione hesitated. When we were bringing you here, he couldn't decide whether to come with us or stay with Ginny." Something broke in Harry's expression, a final betrayal on top of everything else. "I see," he said flatly. "Do not judge Mr. Weasley too harshly yet, Harry," Dumbledore counseled. "Family loyalty runs deep, and he has just learned shocking truths about his sister and possibly his mother. He will need time to process this." Harry didn't respond, his gaze fixed on the ceiling. The monitoring charms showed his magical core stabilizing gradually, the erratic pulses evening out into a steady rhythm. "The physical danger has passed," Madame Pomfrey announced after casting another diagnostic charm. "But Mr. Potter will need to remain here for observation for at least 3 days. Amortentia leaves lingering effects, particularly after such prolonged exposure." Dumbledore nodded. "I must attend to the legal aspects of this situation, but I will return tomorrow, Harry. Is there anything you need in the meantime?" "Just the truth," Harry said, his voice stronger now despite the exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "I want to know exactly what was done to me, and who knew about it." "You have my word," Dumbledore promised gravely. With a final sympathetic glance, he departed, his usual jovial demeanor entirely absent. Madame Pomfrey bustled around the bed, adjusting monitoring charms and preparing potions. You'll need these to help your system recover, Mr. Potter. Calming draft, dreamless sleep, and a magical core stabilizer. Harry eyed the vials suspiciously, and Hermione felt a fresh wave of anguish at the realization that he now had reason to distrust potions offered to him. "They're safe, Harry," she assured him. "I'll watch her prepare each one." His grateful glance nearly undid her composure completely. Madame Pomfrey, understanding immediately, made a show of explaining each potion as she measured them out. "I'll leave these here," she said when finished. "Take them when you're ready, Mr. Potter. I'll be in my office if you need anything. Miss Granger, you may stay as long as you wish." When they were alone, Harry turned to Hermione, his expression raw and vulnerable in a way she'd rarely seen. 340 times, he said quietly. "That's what you said earlier, right?" Hermione nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "I should have known something was wrong," he continued, self-recrimination evident in every word. "How could I not realize I was being potioned?" "That's exactly what they're designed to do, Harry," Hermione said fiercely. "Love potions create feelings that seem natural, even when they're not. And Ginny was careful, she dosed you gradually, building up over time so the changes wouldn't seem sudden." "But some part of me did know," Harry insisted. "My magic was fighting it. Those accidents weren't accidents at all." "Exactly, your magic recognized the invasion even when your conscious mind couldn't." Hermione squeezed his hand. "You're incredibly powerful, Harry. Most wizards never would have been able to fight off that much amortentia, let alone expel it completely." Harry absorbed this, a faint glimmer of pride momentarily outshining the betrayal in his eyes. "What happens now? With Ginny and the Weasleys?" Hermione chose her words carefully. "Neville said prolonged use of love potions is classified as magical coercion. It carries serious penalties. And if Mrs. Weasley was involved in teaching Ginny how to brew amortentia or encouraging her to use it, she'll have broken so many laws," Harry finished. "And Mr. Weasley? The rest of them?" "I don't know," Hermione admitted. "I don't think any of the others knew. Fred and George sell love potions in their joke shop, but even they would draw the line at this." Harry nodded slowly, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. "I hope so. I couldn't bear it if all of them were in on it." He hesitated. "And Ron? Do you think he knew?" "No," Hermione said firmly. "Ron can't keep a secret to save his life, and he looked genuinely shocked when the memories appeared." "But he's torn, Harry. Ginny is his sister. And I'm supposed to be his best friend," Harry replied bitterly. 7 years of friendship against family loyalty. I know which one will win." Hermione wanted to argue, to defend Ron, but found she couldn't. Ron's hesitation in the common room had spoken volumes. "You should take the potions," she said instead, nodding toward the vials. "You need rest." Harry eyed the potions warily again but nodded. "Will you stay? At least until I fall asleep?" "Of course," Hermione promised. "I'm not going anywhere." With her reassurance, Harry took the potions one by one, grimacing at the taste but not hesitating. The effect was almost immediate, his tense muscles relaxed, and his eyelids grew heavy. "Thanks for being here," he murmured, already half asleep. "For believing me." "Always," Hermione whispered, but he was already unconscious, his breathing deep and even. She sat beside him long after he fell asleep, her mind racing through the implications of everything that had happened. The legal ramifications for Ginny. The possible involvement of Molly Weasley. The fracturing of friendships that had seemed unbreakable. Above all, she wondered how Harry would cope with the knowledge that for 7 months, his feelings and many of his actions hadn't truly been his own. That a person he had trusted had violated his mind and will hundreds of times. That others might have known or suspected and done nothing. The hospital wing doors opened quietly, admitting Professor McGonagall. The Transfiguration professor approached the bed, her face drawn with concern and barely suppressed anger. How is he? She asked softly, mindful of Harry's sleep. Physically better, Hermione replied. Emotionally? I don't know. McGonagall nodded grimly. Miss Weasley has been removed from the school. Aurors Shacklebolt and Tonks arrived to take her statement and evidence. They were most disturbed by what they found. And the memories? From the common room? Secured and extracted into a pensieve. They will be crucial evidence. McGonagall's lips thinned. Miss Weasley's trunk contained a journal detailing her progress with Mr. Potter, along with recipes and schedules for administering various potions. The evidence is overwhelming. Hermione felt sick imagining Ginny meticulously planning and documenting Harry's manipulation. Did she say why? Why she did this? Something like disgust flashed across McGonagall's face. She maintains it was harmless, that she was merely helping Mr. Potter recognize his true feelings. She claims her mother assured her this was acceptable courtship behavior. That's revolting, Hermione whispered. It's not courtship, it's assault. Precisely, Miss Granger. The Weasley parents have been contacted and will arrive tomorrow. Arthur was devastated. Molly's reaction was more concerning. She defended Ginny, Hermione guessed, a cold certainty settling in her stomach. McGonagall nodded once, sharply. Initially, yes. She suggested it was a youthful indiscretion that was being blown out of proportion. 340 doses of amortentia isn't a youthful indiscretion, Hermione hissed, careful to keep her voice low enough not to disturb Harry. Indeed not. When informed of the extent and duration, even Molly Weasley could not maintain that position. McGonagall glanced at Harry's sleeping form. The Aurors have requested to speak with Mr. Potter when he is well enough. I have informed them that will not be for at least 3 days, and only with his explicit consent and appropriate support present. Hermione felt a rush of gratitude for her head of house's protectiveness. Thank you, Professor. It is the very least I can do, McGonagall replied, genuine regret in her voice. We failed to protect Mr. Potter from a threat within our own walls. That is unacceptable. They sat in silence for a moment, watching Harry's peaceful sleep, a deceptive peace that would shatter upon waking. You should rest, Miss Granger, McGonagall said eventually. I can arrange for a cot to be placed beside Mr. Potter's bed if you wish to remain close. Hermione nodded gratefully. I promised I'd stay. He doesn't trust easily in the best of circumstances, and now. Now he has even more reason for caution, McGonagall finished. Very well. I will inform your professors that you are excused from classes tomorrow. She hesitated, then added more softly, he is fortunate to have a friend like you, Miss Granger. After McGonagall left, Madame Pomfrey brought the promised cot and a set of hospital pajamas. Hermione changed quickly and settled onto the narrow bed, her mind still spinning with everything that had happened. Across from her, Harry slept on, his face finally relaxed thanks to the dreamless sleep. She wondered what tomorrow would bring, the inevitable confrontation with the Weasleys, the beginning of legal proceedings, the whispers that would spread through Hogwarts like wildfire. Harry would wake to a world where his private violation had become public knowledge, where every interaction with Ginny would be scrutinized in retrospect, where friends might choose sides. But he would not face it alone, Hermione vowed silently. Whatever came next, Harry would have at least one person firmly in his corner. With that resolution, she finally closed her eyes, exhaustion claiming her despite the turmoil in her mind. Morning arrived with harsh clarity, sunlight streaming through the hospital wing's high windows. Hermione woke to find Harry already awake, sitting up in bed and staring blankly at the wall opposite. The monitoring charms showed his magic had stabilized overnight, but the haunted look in his eyes spoke of wounds far deeper than magical exhaustion. Hey, she said softly, sitting up. How long have you been awake? Harry shrugged listlessly. A while. Madame Pomfrey came by earlier with more potions. How are you feeling? It was an inadequate question, but Hermione didn't know what else to say. Physically better. The foggy feeling is gone. His expression darkened. Everything else is a mess. Before Hermione could respond, the hospital wing doors opened to admit Professor Dumbledore, accompanied by a grave-looking Arthur Weasley. Harry immediately tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for his wand on the bedside table. "Mr. Weasley has asked to speak with you, Harry," Dumbledore explained gently. "I have assured him that this meeting will only proceed with your consent." Harry's knuckles whitened around his wand, but he gave a single, sharp nod. "Just Mr. Weasley?" "Just me," Arthur confirmed, his usually jovial face drawn with grief. "Molly is with Ginny and the Aurors." Harry gestured to the chair beside his bed, and Arthur approached cautiously, as one might a wounded animal. Hermione made to stand, but Harry's hand shot out to grasp her wrist. "Stay," he said quietly. "Please." She settled back onto the edge of the cot, ready to intervene if necessary. Dumbledore remained by the doors, a silent guardian ensuring the conversation remained civil. "Harry," Arthur began, his voice rough with emotion, "I cannot begin to express my shock and horror at what Ginny has done. I want you to know that I had absolutely no knowledge of her actions, nor would I ever have condoned such violation." Harry studied Arthur's face intently, searching for any sign of deception. "And Mrs. Weasley?" "Ginny said her mother told her it was tradition." "That she did the same to you?" Arthur flinched as though struck. "That is, a complicated matter. Molly gave me a mild attraction potion once during our 7th year, a single dose when I was being particularly oblivious to her hints. It was wrong of her, and we had quite the row when I discovered it." He shook his head. "But what Ginny has done goes so far beyond that isolated incident. 340 doses of amortentia over 7 months, it's unthinkable." "But Mrs. Weasley did tell Ginny about using a love potion on you," Hermione pressed, not willing to let this point slide. "She presented it as a normal courtship strategy." Arthur's shoulders slumped. "I fear Molly has always viewed her youthful indiscretion through rose-colored glasses. She tells it as a humorous anecdote, how she finally got her oblivious crush to notice her. I've objected to this characterization many times over the years, but..." He trailed off, the implications clear. "But she didn't listen," Harry finished flatly. "And now Ginny took that story and amplified it hundreds of times." "Yes," Arthur admitted, misery evident in every line of his face. "Molly's attitude was wrong, harmful even, but I never imagined it would lead to this. Ginny's actions are her own, but I cannot deny that Molly's casual attitude toward love potions may have contributed to Ginny's catastrophically poor judgment." Harry was silent for a long moment, processing this. "What happens now?" he finally asked. "Ginny will face charges before the Wisengamot," Arthur explained, his voice strained but resolute. "Given her age and the severity of the offense, she will likely be sentenced to a minimum of 2 years in a juvenile rehabilitation facility, followed by strict magical probation. Her wand will be restricted, and she will be barred from purchasing or brewing certain potions ingredients for life." Hermione watched Harry carefully, gauging his reaction to this news. His expression remained carefully neutral, but she could see a muscle jumping in his jaw. "And Mrs. Weasley?" he asked. Arthur's face tightened with pain. "The DMLE is investigating her level of knowledge and involvement. If it's determined she actively encouraged or assisted Ginny, she could face accessory charges." "I see." Harry's voice was detached, clinical. "And what do you want from me, Mr. Weasley?" Arthur looked startled by the direct question. I don't want anything from you, Harry. I came to offer my deepest apologies and to assure you that I stand with you in this matter, not with Ginny's actions, regardless of family ties." "And Ron? The others?" "Bill, Charlie, and Percy are horrified. The twins have already written to say they're removing all love potions from their shop's inventory effective immediately. As for Ron..." Arthur hesitated. "Ron is struggling. He loves you like a brother, but Ginny is his sister. He's angry and confused, torn between loyalties. I understand, Harry said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Thank you for coming, Mr. Weasley. It was a clear dismissal. Arthur rose, pain evident in every movement. Harry, I know words are inadequate, but please know that you have always been and will always be welcome in my home, in my family, should you ever wish it. Harry's expression softened fractionally. Thank you. I just need time. After Arthur left, escorted by Dumbledore, Harry released a shuddering breath. I believe him, he said quietly. About not knowing. So do I, Hermione agreed. He seems genuinely devastated. 2 years in rehabilitation, Harry mused, his expression unreadable. Is that enough for what she did? Hermione considered carefully before answering. The wizarding justice system approaches magical coercion differently than Muggle law would approach something similar. They focus on rehabilitation and magical restrictions rather than punitive imprisonment. The lifelong restriction on certain potions' ingredients is actually quite severe, it will follow her forever. Harry nodded slowly. I don't want vengeance. I just want justice. And to know this can't happen again, to me or anyone else. The publicity from this case might actually help with that, Hermione pointed out. Love potions are treated as jokes in wizarding culture, but this might force people to reconsider their casual attitude toward them. Before Harry could respond, the doors opened again, this time admitting Ron. He stood awkwardly just inside the entrance, his face pale and uncertain. Harry stiffened. You can come in, he said after a moment, his voice carefully neutral. Ron approached slowly, his usual confidence entirely absent. He stopped at the foot of Harry's bed, not presuming to take the chair his father had vacated. Harry, he began, then faltered. I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. For what? Harry asked bluntly. For your sister potioning me? Or for not coming with me last night when I needed you? Ron flinched. Both. All of it. I should have been here. I know that. When I saw those memories, and Ginny didn't deny it, I couldn't process it. My little sister doing that to my best mate. He ran a hand through his hair in agitation. It doesn't make it right, me freezing up like that. I know it doesn't. Harry studied him for a long moment. Did you know? Be honest, Ron. Did you have any idea what she was doing? No. Ron exclaimed, genuine horror in his voice. Harry, I swear on my magic, I had no idea. If I'd known she was slipping you love potions, even once, let alone hundreds of times, I'd have stopped her myself. Hermione watched Harry carefully, seeing the conflict in his eyes, the desire to believe his friend warring with newfound caution. I believe you, Harry said finally. But things can't just go back to normal, Ron. I need time. Relief and pain mingled on Ron's face. I understand. I know I haven't earned your trust back yet. He hesitated. What can I do? To help, I mean. Harry considered this. Just, be honest. Don't try to defend what Ginny did. Don't pretend it wasn't that bad. I would never, Ron said fervently. What she did was unforgivable. I told her so last night, after you were taken here. We had a massive row about it. Surprise flickered across Harry's face. You did? Ron nodded grimly. I asked her how she could do that to anyone, let alone you. She tried the "Mom said it was fine" excuse, and I told her that was bollocks. One mild attraction potion as a teenager isn't the same as systematically drugging someone for months. Some of the tension left Harry's shoulders. Thank you for that. It's the bare minimum, Ron muttered, shame evident in his voice. I should have been here last night. I should have noticed something was off with you these past months. None of us noticed, Hermione interjected. Ginny was careful, and love potions are designed to create feelings that seem natural. Ron shook his head. Still should have seen it. You're my best mate, Harry. I know you better than anyone except maybe Hermione. The way you suddenly got obsessed with Ginny after years of barely noticing her. I should have questioned it. We all should have, Hermione admitted. But what matters now is making sure Harry recovers and gets justice. Ron nodded firmly. Anything you need, mate. Anything at all. The sincerity in his voice seemed to reach Harry, who offered a small, tentative smile, the first since the incident. Thanks, Ron. That means a lot. The moment of reconciliation was interrupted by the arrival of Madame Pomfrey, carrying a tray of potions and a light breakfast. Enough visitors for now, she declared. Mr. Potter needs rest and nourishment. Ron backed away immediately. I'll come back later, if that's okay. Harry nodded. Yeah, that's fine. After Ron left, Harry picked at his breakfast without enthusiasm while Madame Pomfrey fussed over his monitoring charms. Your magical core has stabilized remarkably well, she announced. Another day of rest, and you should be physically recovered, though I'd advise against any significant magical exertion for at least a week. What about? Harry hesitated. What about the psychological effects of being potioned for so long? Madame Pomfrey's expression softened. That's a more complex healing process, Mr. Potter. I've arranged for a mind healer from St. Mungo's to visit tomorrow. Specialist Ainsworth has extensive experience with victims of magical coercion. Harry winced at the word victim, but nodded acceptance. Will I ever be sure which feelings are real? Which decisions were actually mine? It was a profound question that struck Hermione to her core. The violation of Harry's autonomy went beyond the physical, it attacked the very foundation of his identity and self-determination. With time and proper support, yes, Madame Pomfrey assured him. Mind healer Ainsworth will help you distinguish between manufactured emotions and genuine ones. Your magic has already begun the process by rejecting the foreign influence so dramatically. This seemed to provide Harry some comfort. He finished his breakfast with more enthusiasm and took the healing potions without complaint. Throughout the day, various professors stopped by to check on his condition. Flitwick, Sprout, even Snape made a brief, awkward appearance that consisted mainly of ensuring Harry was taking his potions correctly. News of what had happened spread through Hogwarts like wildfire despite staff efforts to contain it. By afternoon, students were finding increasingly creative excuses to pass by the hospital wing, hoping for a glimpse of Harry. Madame Pomfrey eventually placed privacy screens around his bed and restricted visitors to a pre-approved list. Neville came bearing a rare plant with calming properties. Luna arrived with a strange contraption she claimed would ward off potion residue raxburts. The Gryffindor Quidditch team sent a massive card signed by everyone except Ginny. Even Draco Malfoy sent a formal note expressing his disgust at such dishonorable tactics and wishing Potter a swift recovery so we may resume competing on equal footing. That's almost civil, Hermione remarked after reading Malfoy's note aloud. Harry snorted. For Malfoy, it's practically a love letter. His expression immediately darkened at his own choice of words. Sorry, bad joke. It's okay to find humor where you can, Harry, Hermione said gently. It doesn't diminish what happened. As evening approached, Professor McGonagall returned with an update on the legal proceedings. Miss Weasley has been formally charged with sustained magical coercion, brewing restricted potions without a license, and administering potions without consent. Given the overwhelming evidence, her legal counsel has advised her to enter a guilty plea in exchange for a reduced sentence. What about Mrs. Weasley? Harry asked. McGonagall's expression tightened. Molly Weasley is being charged as an accessory. Investigators found correspondence between mother and daughter discussing potion techniques and schedules. She hesitated before adding, they also found evidence suggesting Mrs. Weasley sent Ginny ready-made doses during times Ginny couldn't brew herself, such as holidays. Harry closed his eyes briefly, absorbing this betrayal from a woman he had once viewed as a surrogate mother. And Mr. Weasley? The others? Arthur is cooperating fully with the investigation. There is no evidence he was aware of or involved in any way. The other Weasley children are similarly cleared of suspicion. Relief flickered across Harry's face. Good. That's good. McGonagall studied him with concern. This must be extraordinarily difficult for you, Potter. Please know that the entire staff stands ready to support you in whatever way you need. Thank you, Professor, Harry said quietly. Right now, I just need time to process everything. Of course. McGonagall turned to Hermione. Miss Granger, while your dedication to Mr. Potter is admirable, you must attend to your own needs as well. I suggest you return to Gryffindor Tower for proper rest tonight. Hermione hesitated, looking to Harry for guidance. It's okay, he assured her. I'll be fine for one night. You should sleep in a real bed. Though reluctant, Hermione recognized the wisdom in this advice. I'll come first thing in the morning, she promised, gathering her things. After she left, Harry found himself truly alone for the first time since the incident. The hospital wing was quiet, the privacy screens creating a small sanctuary from the curious eyes of Hogwarts. In this solitude, the full weight of what had happened settled upon him. 340 doses. 7 months of his life, his choices, his feelings manipulated by someone he had trusted. What was real? What was manufactured? Had he ever truly felt anything for Ginny, or was it all an artificial construction? More disturbing still was the realization that others had known, at least Molly, possibly others. How many people had watched his behavior change and said nothing? How many had attributed his sudden interest in Ginny to natural teenage hormones rather than systematic potioning? The violation felt complete, absolute. Not just his body and mind, but his relationships, his reputation, his very concept of self. Harry's magic stirred restlessly within him, responding to his distress. Madame Pomfrey's monitoring charms glowed briefly brighter, a visual representation of the turmoil inside him. He forced himself to breathe deeply, to practice the calming techniques Pomfrey had taught him earlier. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, meetings with the mind healer, likely interviews with Aurors, the continuing legal proceedings. For tonight, he needed rest. As he drifted toward sleep, Harry found himself reflecting on the moment his magic had finally rebelled, that explosive rejection of Ginny's kiss. There had been a strange satisfaction in that moment of clarity, when his core had finally gathered enough strength to purge the foreign influence. His magic had protected him when nothing and no one else could. Perhaps that was where healing would begin, with the recognition that some essential part of him had never been fully conquered, had fought against the violation even when his conscious mind couldn't identify it. With that comforting thought, Harry finally surrendered to sleep, his dreams mercifully empty of flowery scents and false affection. The next morning brought the promised visit from mind healer Ainsworth, a calm, middle-aged witch with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She spoke with Harry privately for 2 hours, their conversation shielded by privacy charms. When Hermione returned mid-morning, she found Harry looking exhausted but somehow lighter. It helped, he told her when she asked. Healer Ainsworth explained a lot about how love potions work on the mind, and how to distinguish between genuine emotions and manufactured ones. That's wonderful, Harry, Hermione said, genuinely relieved. Will you see her again? Harry nodded. Twice a week until the end of term, then at St. Mungo's over the summer. She thinks I'll make a full psychological recovery, but it will take time. The day progressed with visits from friends and meetings with professors about catching up on missed work. By evening, Madame Pomfrey declared Harry physically recovered enough to return to Gryffindor Tower, with strict limitations on magic use and mandatory check-ins every other day. Are you sure you're ready? Hermione asked as Harry changed into clean clothes behind the privacy screen. Everyone will be staring, whispering. They always do, Harry replied with a wry smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. At least this time it's about something that actually happened, not some ridiculous rumor. The walk back to Gryffindor Tower felt interminable, with students stopping to stare openly as Harry passed. Some offered awkward words of support, others quickly averted their eyes, clearly unsure how to interact with someone who had experienced such a violation. At the fat lady's portrait, Harry hesitated. This is where it happened. Hermione squeezed his arm supportively. We can take as long as you need. Harry took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and spoke the password. The portrait swung open to reveal the common room, which fell instantly silent as Harry stepped through. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then Neville stood from his armchair by the fire. Welcome back, Harry, he said simply, breaking the tension. Others followed Neville's lead, offering quiet welcomes and respectfully giving Harry space. There was no mention of Ginny or what had happened, a conspiracy of silence that was somehow more comforting than false cheer or awkward sympathy. Ron approached cautiously, hovering at the edge of Harry's personal space. Brought your homework up to the dorm, he said, clearly aiming for normalcy. Thought you might want to get started on the Transfiguration essay. It's a beast. Harry offered a small smile. Thanks, Ron. That simple exchange seemed to further ease the tension in the room. Conversations gradually resumed, though noticeably quieter than usual. Harry made his way to an armchair by the fire, deliberately not the sofa where the incident had occurred, and sat down. Chess. Ron offered tentatively. Harry considered for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, all right. Fair warning though, I might actually win for once. I'm thinking clearer than I have in months. It was a joke, but one with a sharp edge of truth that made Ron wince. Still, he set up the board, and soon they were engaged in their familiar game, with Hermione reading nearby, occasionally glancing up to check on Harry. When Harry finally retired to his dormitory that night, exhausted from the emotional strain of his return, he found his bed surrounded by subtle protective charms, courtesy of his dorm mates, Neville explained quietly. Just to make sure no one can slip you anything else. The gesture brought unexpected tears to Harry's eyes. Thanks, he managed, throat tight with emotion. All of you. As he lay in bed that night, listening to the familiar sounds of his dorm mates sleeping, Harry felt a small measure of peace for the first time since his magic had violently rejected Ginny's kiss. The road to recovery stretched long before him, with legal proceedings, therapy sessions, and the complex task of rebuilding trust in his own feelings. But he was not alone on that road. His true friends had rallied around him. His magic had proven strong enough to protect him, even against sustained assault. And perhaps most importantly, the truth, however painful, was finally known. In the darkness of the dormitory, Harry found himself thinking of what Healer Ainsworth had told him earlier. Healing isn't about forgetting what happened, Mr. Potter. It's about reclaiming your autonomy, trusting your judgment again, and moving forward with the knowledge that you are stronger than what was done to you. 340 doses of Amortentia hadn't been able to permanently override his true self. In that realization lay not just pain, but power, and the first tentative steps toward healing. Chapter 2, Shattered Trust. Morning light filtered through the dormitory windows, casting long shadows across Harry's bed. He'd been awake for hours, watching dust motes dance in the sunbeams, reluctant to face the day ahead. 3 days had passed since his return to Gryffindor Tower, and while the physical symptoms of the potion purge had subsided, the psychological aftermath remained raw and exposed. Harry reached for his glasses on the bedside table, his movements deliberate and cautious. Since the incident in the common room, he'd developed new habits, checking his food before eating, casting detection charms on his drinks, keeping his belongings under constant surveillance. Healer Ainsworth had assured him these were normal protective responses to what he'd experienced, but they still felt foreign, a constant reminder of what had been done to him. The dormitory was empty, his roommates already at breakfast. Harry appreciated their consideration, they'd been giving him space while still maintaining a protective presence. Neville, in particular, had become an unexpected pillar of support, teaching Harry obscure plant-based detection charms that could identify traces of potions in food and drink. With a resigned sigh, Harry forced himself out of bed and into the bathroom. The face that greeted him in the mirror looked different somehow, eyes sharper, expression more guarded. Healer Ainsworth had explained that as the last traces of amortentia left his system, he would experience a recalibration of emotions and perceptions. What she hadn't mentioned was how disconcerting it would feel, like rediscovering parts of himself that had been muffled for months. After showering and dressing, Harry made his way down to the common room, unsurprised to find Hermione waiting for him, a thick book open on her lap. "Morning," she said, closing the book as he approached. "Sleep any better?" Harry shrugged. "Some. The dreams are getting less intense." The nightmares had started the second night after his return, vivid scenes of being trapped in his own body while someone else controlled his thoughts and actions. Healer Ainsworth had provided dreamless sleep potion, but Harry used it sparingly, wary of becoming dependent on any potion, even a therapeutic one. "That's progress," Hermione said encouragingly. Her eyes held a question she was too tactful to ask aloud. "I'm ready," Harry answered the unspoken query. "For the meeting with the Aurors?" Hermione nodded, relief evident in her expression. "They've set up in Professor McGonagall's office. She insisted they come to you rather than making you go to the ministry." The thought of McGonagall's protectiveness brought a small smile to Harry's face. The Transfiguration professor had become fiercely defensive since the incident, going so far as to assign detention to a group of Slytherins she'd overheard making crude jokes about love potions. "Better get it over with," Harry said, moving toward the portrait hole. The corridors were mercifully empty, most students already at breakfast. Still, those few they passed stared openly, conversations halting mid-sentence as Harry walked by. The story had spread beyond Hogwarts now, making headlines in the Daily Prophet and prompting heated debates about love potion regulation in Wizarding Society. McGonagall was waiting outside her office, her expression softening slightly as Harry approached. "Mr. Potter, Miss Granger. The Aurors have been briefed on time limitations and appropriate questioning methods. I will remain present throughout, and you may end the interview at any time should you feel uncomfortable." "Thank you, Professor," Harry said, genuinely grateful for her advocacy. Inside, they found Kingsley Shacklebolt and Tonks seated at a conjured table, files spread before them. Both Aurors rose as Harry entered, their expressions professional but sympathetic. "Harry," Kingsley greeted him, his deep voice reassuringly familiar. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with us. We'll keep this as brief as possible." "Watcher, Harry," Tonks added, her hair a subdued blue rather than her usual vibrant pink. "Remember, we can stop any time you need a break." Harry sat in the offered chair, Hermione taking the one beside him. "I want to help. I want this on record." Kingsley nodded approvingly. "We'll start with the basics and work from there. When did you first notice symptoms that might have indicated you were being dosed with love potion?" Harry considered carefully. Looking back, it started after Christmas at the Burrow. I returned to school and suddenly couldn't stop thinking about Ginny. It felt mechanical. Like thoughts being inserted into my head. Did you recognize these feelings as unusual at the time? Tonks asked, a dictation quill taking notes beside her. Not exactly, Harry admitted. It was more like, having songs stuck in my head. Thoughts about Ginny would appear randomly, persistently. I assumed it was just normal teenage attraction, but there was always something off about it. Were there physical manifestations? Reactions to her presence or touch? Harry's jaw tightened. My heart would race when she was near. I'd feel dizzy, almost drunk. And there was always this flowery scent that seemed to cloud my thinking. He swallowed hard. When she touched me, it felt like being hooked behind the navel with a port key, a pulling sensation I couldn't resist. Kingsley and Tonks exchanged significant glances. Classic symptoms of high-grade amortentia, Kingsley noted. The compulsive thoughts, the physical reactions, the signature scent manifestation. We've documented similar effects in other cases of sustained potioning, Tonks added. Though usually with far fewer doses over much shorter periods. Harry's stomach churned at the clinical discussion of what had been done to him. You've seen this before. People being systematically dosed like this? Not to this extent, Kingsley said gravely. The evidence suggests Miss Weasley was administering increasingly potent doses as your system built tolerance. In most cases, the perpetrator lacks the skill to adjust potency, leading to diminishing effects that often alert the victim. Ginny is talented at potions, Harry said flatly. Always has been. McGonagall made a small noise of distress. We did fail you, Potter. The signs were there, had any of us been looking properly. Harry shook his head. You couldn't have known, Professor. I didn't even know. Were you aware of any incidents of accidental magic during the period you were being potioned? Tonks asked, redirecting the conversation. Several, Harry confirmed. Glasses shattered when Ginny handed them to me. My broom bucked once when she tried to ride with me. A bench splintered beneath us in the Great Hall. Your magic trying to protect you, Kingsley observed. Impressive, given the potency and frequency of the doses. Harry remembered what Madame Pomfrey had said about his magical core fighting the foreign influence. I just wish it had succeeded sooner. The fact that it succeeded at all is remarkable, Tonks said. Most wizards' cores would have eventually accepted the potion as normal, especially after so many doses. Yours fought back and eventually won. There was a strange pride in that, Harry realized, that some essential part of him had never surrendered, had continued fighting even when his conscious mind couldn't identify the threat. We've reviewed the extracted memories from the common room incident, Kingsley continued. But we'd like to hear, in your own words, what happened that night. Harry took a deep breath, steeling himself. We'd just won the Quidditch match against Slytherin. Everyone was celebrating in the common room. Ginny approached me, and when Colin Creevey asked for a photo, she kissed me. His voice hardened. My magic just exploded. It felt like something breaking free inside me, this enormous pressure finally releasing. I saw golden light surrounding me, and Ginny was suspended in the air. Then those purple memory things started coming out of her. And you could see the memories. All of you. Tonks clarified. Everyone in the common room could see them, Hermione confirmed. They formed clear scenes showing Ginny brewing potions, adding them to Harry's food and drinks, consulting a journal. And they were numbered, counting up to 340. Kingsley made a note on his parchment. This aligns with the evidence found in Miss Weasley's possession. Her journal documented 342 separate instances of administering love potion to you, Harry. The final 2 doses were apparently given the morning of the Quidditch match and at lunch that day. Harry felt sick. 2 doses in one day. She was increasing frequency as well as potency, Tonks explained grimly. The journal indicates she'd moved from weekly dosing to daily, and was considering twice-daily administration going forward. The implication, that Ginny had been planning to increase her control over him even further, sent a wave of cold horror through Harry. Why? Why would she do this? Kingsley and Tonks exchanged uncomfortable glances. The journal provides some insight into her motivations, Kingsley said carefully. It would perhaps be better for you to discuss this aspect with Healer Ainsworth. The psychological components are complex. I want to know, Harry insisted. I need to understand why she did this to me. After a moment of hesitation, Kingsley nodded. Very well. Miss Weasley's journal describes a long-standing infatuation with you, dating back to before she even met you. This fantasy version of Harry Potter became entangled with her sense of self and future. When the real you failed to conform to this fantasy by not developing romantic interest in her naturally, she apparently decided to correct this perceived error. She wrote that she was helping you recognize your true feelings, Tonks added, disgust evident in her voice. She genuinely believed the potions were merely removing obstacles to a predestined relationship. Harry's knuckles whitened as he gripped the arms of his chair. So she didn't see anything wrong with what she was doing. With stealing my choices, my will. Unfortunately, no, Kingsley confirmed. This attitude appears to have been reinforced by her mother's similar perspective on love potions as acceptable courtship aids. Hermione made a small, angry sound beside Harry. That's revolting. Love potions don't create love, they create obsession and manufactured attraction. It's the opposite of helping someone recognize their true feelings. Indeed, Miss Granger, McGonagall agreed, her voice tight with suppressed fury. A perspective that has been tragically normalized in certain circles of wizarding society. Harry processed this information, anger warring with a profound sense of betrayal. What about Molly's involvement? You mentioned she was being charged as an accessory. Kingsley's expression turned even more serious. The investigation has confirmed that Molly Weasley provided both brewing instructions and pre-made doses to her daughter. Correspondence between them shows she was fully aware of the ongoing potioning and actively encouraged it. We found preserved letters, Tonks elaborated. In one, dated March, Molly wrote, "Don't worry if he seems resistant, dear. Arthur was the same way at first. Persistence is key. I'm sending another batch of the special tea bags for when the effect starts to wane." The confirmation of Molly's involvement felt like a physical blow. Harry had considered her a surrogate mother, had trusted her implicitly. To learn that she had not only known about but actively facilitated his violation was almost more painful than Ginny's actions. And Mr. Weasley? The others? Harry asked, needing to know the full extent of the betrayal. All clear, Kingsley assured him. Arthur Weasley has been extensively questioned under voluntary veritaserum and was genuinely shocked by both his daughter's actions and his wife's involvement. The other Weasley children similarly had no knowledge of the scheme. Including Ron? Harry pressed, still harboring lingering doubts about his friend's ignorance. Including Ronald, Kingsley confirmed. He submitted to voluntary questioning under veritaserum as well, at his own insistence. He was adamant that investigators understand he had no part in or knowledge of his sister's actions. That, at least, provided some relief. Ron's initial hesitation in the common room still stung, but knowing he had voluntarily taken veritaserum to prove his innocence meant something. What happens next? Harry asked, exhaustion creeping into his voice. Miss Weasley's hearing before the Wisengamot is scheduled for next week, Kingsley explained. Given the overwhelming evidence and her admission of guilt, it will likely be brief. She has agreed to a plea arrangement that will sentence her to 18 months in a juvenile rehabilitation facility followed by 3 years of probation and permanent restrictions on potions brewing. And Mrs. Weasley? Her case is more complex, Tonks said. As an adult facilitating magical coercion of a minor, she faces more severe charges. The current offer from the prosecutor is 3 years in Azkaban, reduced from 5 due to her lack of previous criminal history. Harry absorbed this information silently. The prospect of Molly Weasley in Azkaban felt surreal, yet the evidence of her willing participation in his systematic violation was irrefutable. You won't need to appear at either hearing, Kingsley assured him. The extracted memories and physical evidence are more than sufficient. However, you have the right to submit a victim impact statement if you wish. I'll think about it, Harry said, uncertain how he felt about publicly detailing the impact of what had been done to him. One final matter, Kingsley said, his voice gentling. The investigation revealed something concerning regarding Albus Dumbledore. Harry's head snapped up. Dumbledore? Was he involved? Not directly, Kingsley clarified quickly. But under questioning, Molly Weasley claimed that Dumbledore had made comments to her suggesting you and Ginny would make a fortuitous match, and that she should encourage the connection. While this falls far short of endorsing love potions, it does raise questions about boundaries. Harry's jaw tightened. So Dumbledore was playing matchmaker. It appears he may have had some interest in seeing you and Miss Weasley together, Tonks confirmed reluctantly. Though we found no evidence he knew about or condoned the use of love potions. Another betrayal, albeit a lesser one. Harry had grown accustomed to Dumbledore's manipulations, his tendency to arrange Harry's life according to some greater plan only he fully understood. But this felt personal in a way previous interventions hadn't. Is there anything else you need from me? Harry asked, suddenly desperate to end the interview. Kingsley seemed to sense his fatigue. Nothing more today. You've been very helpful, Harry. The information you've provided will strengthen the case and potentially help prevent similar situations in the future. We're pushing for stricter regulation of love potions, Tonks added. This case has highlighted dangerous gaps in existing legislation. After a few more formalities, the interview concluded. McGonagall escorted the Aurors out, leaving Harry and Hermione alone in the office for a moment. You did brilliantly, Hermione said softly, reaching for his hand. Harry accepted the comfort of her touch, grateful for her steady presence. 18 months for Ginny. 3 years for Molly. Is it enough, Hermione? For what they did? The sentences align with precedent, she replied carefully. But more important than the punishment is the prevention, stopping them from ever doing this again, to you or anyone else. The permanent restrictions on Ginny's ability to brew or purchase certain potions' ingredients will follow her for life. Harry nodded, attempting to find satisfaction in that knowledge. And the others? Bill, Charlie, Percy, the twins. How do I face them knowing what their mother and sister did? One day at a time, Hermione suggested. They're victims in this too, in a different way. Their family has been shattered by Ginny and Molly's actions. The door opened as McGonagall returned, her expression softening at the sight of Harry's evident exhaustion. You've done enough for today, Potter. I've informed your professors you'll be excused from classes. Perhaps some fresh air would do you good. The suggestion of escape was too tempting to resist. Thank you, Professor. Outside in the corridor, Harry turned to Hermione. I think I need some time alone. To process everything. Understanding immediately, she nodded. Of course. I'll bring notes from classes to the common room later. Harry made his way through the castle and out onto the grounds, heading instinctively toward the Quidditch pitch. Flying had always provided relief when his thoughts became too tangled, too heavy. Perhaps it could still offer that escape. The pitch was empty, practice not scheduled until later that afternoon. Harry summoned his firebolt from the broom shed with a silent accio, momentarily surprised by the ease with which his magic responded. Madame Pomfrey had explained that with the Amortentia purged from his system, his magical control would likely improve, freed from the constant subconscious battle against the potion's influence. Mounting the broom, Harry kicked off hard, soaring into the clear November sky. The rush of cold air against his face felt cleansing, washing away the claustrophobia of McGonagall's office, the weight of the Aurors revelations. Higher and higher he climbed, until Hogwarts looked like a toy castle below him, its problems distant and manageable. Up here, alone with the wind and clouds, Harry could finally face the thoughts he'd been suppressing. The betrayal cut deep, not just Ginny's actions or Molly's complicity, but the fundamental violation of trust. People he had considered family had conspired to strip him of his autonomy, his right to choose who to love, all while convincing themselves they were acting in his best interest. And Dumbledore, had the headmaster truly been manipulating him toward Ginny? Was his entire relationship with the Weasley family engineered, another piece in some grand design? The thought left a bitter taste in his mouth. Harry executed a series of sharp turns and dives, channeling his anger into movement. The firebolt responded perfectly, as though eager to help him outfly his demons. After nearly an hour of increasingly complex maneuvers, Harry finally descended, physically exhausted but mentally clearer than he'd felt in days. As he approached the broom shed, he was surprised to see a solitary figure waiting nearby, tall, red-haired, and visibly nervous. Bill Weasley. Harry tensed, instinctively gripping his wand in his pocket as he approached. Bill. Didn't know you were at Hogwarts. Arrived this morning, Bill explained, maintaining a respectful distance. I've been meeting with McGonagall about the family situation. I saw you flying and thought, well, I hoped we might talk. If you're willing. Harry studied the eldest Weasley brother carefully. He'd always liked Bill. The cool, competent cursebreaker had been a positive male role model during Harry's limited interactions with him. But now, caution overrode familiarity. What about? Harry asked neutrally. About what happened to you, Bill said directly. About my sister and mother's actions. And about where the rest of us stand. After a moment's consideration, Harry nodded toward a nearby bench. They sat with a careful space between them, neither speaking immediately. Bill seemed to be gathering his thoughts, his scarred face unusually solemn. First, he began, I want to say how deeply sorry I am for what was done to you, Harry. It was unconscionable, unforgivable, and in no way representative of what the rest of us believe or condone. I know you weren't involved, Harry acknowledged. The Aurors confirmed that. Bill nodded. Yes, but that's not enough. I need you to understand that we, myself, Charlie, Percy, Fred, George, and Dad, are horrified and disgusted by what Ginny and Mum did. We've been trying to make sense of it, to understand how they could possibly justify such actions to themselves. And? Have you figured it out? Harry couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. Partially, Bill admitted. It goes back generations in Mum's family, the Pruitts. There's a tradition, I suppose you'd call it, though that dignifies it too much. A belief that love potions are acceptable tools for securing desirable matches. His disgust was evident. Dad always opposed this view, but it seems Mum passed it to Ginny anyway, in secret. Your mother didn't just pass along the belief, Harry pointed out coldly. She actively helped Ginny potion me for months. She sent pre-made doses during holidays. Bill flinched. Yes. There's no excuse for that, none whatsoever. What she did was criminal, and she deserves the consequences coming to her. He ran a hand through his long hair, a gesture of agitation. That's part of why I wanted to speak with you. Dad is filing for divorce. That was unexpected. Divorce? I didn't know wizards did that. It's rare, but possible in cases of serious magical malfeasance against a spouse or family, Bill explained. Dad considers Mum's actions a fundamental betrayal of not just you, but everything their marriage supposedly stood for. Harry absorbed this information, unsure how to feel about it. The Weasley parents' relationship had always seemed so solid, a model of what a loving marriage could be. To learn it had fractured, and because of what was done to him, added another layer of complication to an already painful situation. I'm sorry, Harry said finally. For your father. For all of you. This can't be easy. Bill looked startled, then moved. Merlin, Harry. You're apologizing to us? After what our family did to you? Not your whole family, Harry corrected. Just, parts of it. That distinction means more than you know, Bill said quietly. We've been worried you might rightfully want nothing to do with any Weasley ever again. Harry considered this. The thought had certainly crossed his mind in darker moments. I don't know what I want yet, he admitted. Everything still feels raw. Confused. I need time. Of course, Bill agreed immediately. Time and space. We respect that completely. I just wanted you to know that the rest of us stand with you, not with what Ginny and Mum did. And if you ever decide you want any of us in your life again, in any capacity, that door remains open. The sincerity in Bill's voice was unmistakable. Harry felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. Thank you. That means something. They sat in silence for a moment, the November wind rustling through the last autumn leaves clinging to nearby trees. The twins closed the love potion section of their shop, Bill mentioned eventually. Permanently. They're also funding research into more effective detection methods for restaurants and pubs. Good, Harry said firmly. Love potions shouldn't be sold as jokes. No, they shouldn't, Bill agreed. This whole situation has forced our world to reconsider things we've normalized for too long. He hesitated. There's something else you should know. Charlie, Percy, the twins, and I have all taken magical vows, publicly, through official channels, condemning what was done to you and renouncing any familial protection for Ginny or Mum's actions. Harry blinked in surprise. A public magical vow was a serious matter in wizarding society, a binding declaration that carried both magical and social weight. For 5 Weasley men to take such a step was a profound statement of where they stood. You didn't have to do that, Harry said softly. We did, Bill insisted. For ourselves as much as for you. We needed to make it unambiguously clear that we reject everything about what was done to you. His expression darkened. The Weasley name has been tarnished by their actions. We can't change that, but we can at least ensure there's no ambiguity about where the rest of us stand. The conversation might have continued, but they were interrupted by the arrival of the Gryffindor Quidditch team for practice. Harry stood, oddly relieved by the interruption. He'd processed enough emotional revelations for one day. I should go, he said. But, thank you for telling me all this, Bill. Bill rose as well, offering his hand. Anytime you want to talk, or not talk, about any of this, I'm available. We all are. Harry shook the offered hand, a small gesture of acceptance if not yet forgiveness. As he walked back toward the castle, he felt a curious lightness. The Weasleys had been his surrogate family for years, the thought of losing that connection entirely had been yet another grief among many. Knowing that most of them stood firmly on his side provided unexpected comfort. In the entrance hall, Harry encountered Ron and Hermione deep in conversation, both looking worried. They fell silent as he approached, expressions shifting to careful neutrality. How was flying? Hermione asked. Good, Harry replied, then added, I saw Bill. We talked. Ron's face registered surprise, then cautious hope. Yeah. How did that go? Better than I expected, Harry admitted. He told me about the vows you all took. Ron's ears reddened. Seemed like the right thing to do. There was an awkward pause, the 3 of them standing in the middle of the bustling entrance hall, students flowing around them on their way to lunch. For a moment, Harry was acutely aware of the stares, the whispers, the not-so-subtle pointing in his direction. Hungry? Ron asked finally, breaking the tension. The simple question, so typical of Ron, so normal, prompted an unexpected laugh from Harry. Starving, actually. As they made their way into the great hall, Harry found himself noticing things he hadn't before, or perhaps had noticed but couldn't properly process through the fog of amortentia. The way conversations hushed briefly as he passed before resuming with increased intensity. The sympathetic glances from some students, the morbid curiosity from others. The subtle protective positioning of friends around him, creating a buffer between Harry and the rest of the school. The Gryffindor table felt different with Ginny's absence, a gap in the usual seating arrangement that no one had filled. Harry deliberately chose a seat facing away from where she typically sat, unwilling to stare at the empty space that would only prompt unwanted thoughts. As food appeared on the platters before them, Harry automatically cast the detection charm Neville had taught him. The subtle blue glow confirmed the absence of potions, allowing him to serve himself with slightly less paranoia than he'd felt the previous days. Aurors came to see you? Ron asked tentatively as they began eating. Harry nodded. Kingsley and Tonks. They were as considerate as possible, given the circumstances. Did they? Ron hesitated, visibly struggling for words. Did they tell you about Mum? Yes, Harry confirmed, watching Ron carefully. About her involvement. The letters they found. Ron's face crumpled slightly, a mix of shame and grief. I still can't believe it. My own mother. How could she think that was okay? How could she help Ginny do that to you? The raw pain in Ron's voice convinced Harry, more than any Veritasrum testimony, that his friend had truly been ignorant of the scheme. The Auror said it goes back generations in your mother's family. A tradition of using love potions to secure relationships. It's barbaric, Hermione interjected fiercely. Treating people's autonomy as an obstacle to be overcome rather than a fundamental right to be respected. Ron nodded miserably. Dad's beside himself. I've never seen him so angry. He's filed for divorce, did you know? Bill mentioned it, Harry confirmed. How are you handling that part of it? Ron seemed surprised by the question, as though he hadn't expected Harry to care about his feelings amidst everything else. Honestly? It's a relief. I couldn't bear the thought of him staying with her after this. It would feel like condoning what she did. The conversation paused as nearly headless Nick drifted past, offering Harry an unusually subdued greeting before continuing on his way. Even the ghosts, it seemed, were treating Harry differently in the aftermath of the revelation. The hearing is next week, Harry said, returning to their discussion. For Ginny, I mean. Your mother's will be later. Ron nodded. Dad told us. He's testifying against both of them, did you know? Voluntarily. That was news to Harry. No, the Aurors didn't mention that. He says it's the right thing to do, Ron continued, pushing food around his plate without eating. That he can't in good conscience try to protect them from the consequences of their actions. The thought of Arthur Weasley, the kindest man Harry knew, being forced into the position of testifying against his wife and daughter created a fresh wave of anger toward Ginny and Molly. Their actions hadn't just violated Harry, they'd fractured their entire family. What about you? Harry asked carefully. Will you attend the hearing? Ron's expression turned conflicted. I don't know. Part of me feels like I should, to show I stand with you, not with what she did. But another part can't bear to watch my sister being sentenced to a rehabilitation facility, even knowing she deserves it. You don't have to choose, Harry said, surprising himself with the words. It's possible to condemn what Ginny did while still caring about what happens to her. She's still your sister. The relief on Ron's face was palpable. Thanks, mate. That means a lot. After lunch, they had defense against the dark arts with Snape, who surprised Harry by treating him with unusual restraint. The potions turn defense professor had always seemed to take pleasure in highlighting Harry's failures and weaknesses, but today he merely nodded when Harry correctly demonstrated a shield variation and moved on without comment. Did Snape just not insult me? Harry whispered to Hermione as they practiced in pairs. He's been different since the incident, she confirmed. Professor McGonagall told me he was furious when he learned what happened. Apparently he has particularly strong views about mind-altering potions being used without consent. Given Snape's history with both occlumency and spying, his position made a certain sense. Still, the absence of his usual antagonism was disconcerting in its own way, another reminder that everything had changed. As the day progressed, Harry found himself increasingly aware of small differences in his perceptions and reactions. Colors seemed more vivid, sounds clearer, as though he'd been experiencing the world through a filter that had suddenly been removed. Healer Ainsworth had explained this phenomenon, how love potions dulled sensory input not directly related to the target of the manufactured affection, creating a narrowed focus that further reinforced the artificial obsession. Most noticeable was the complete absence of thoughts about Ginny. For months, she had featured prominently in his mental landscape, appearing in his thoughts at random intervals regardless of what he was doing. Now, he had to consciously bring her to mind, and when he did, the emotions that arose were entirely negative: anger, betrayal, disgust. It's like I never actually had feelings for her at all, Harry commented to Hermione as they walked back to Gryffindor Tower after dinner. Now that the potion is gone, there's nothing left. No attraction, no affection, not even any good memories that weren't tainted. That's because the feelings weren't yours, Hermione said gently. They were manufactured, imposed from outside. Your brain is recalibrating to their absence. Harry nodded, accepting this explanation but still troubled by the implications. What about other feelings? How do I know which emotions are genuinely mine and which might have been influenced by the potions? Hermione considered this carefully. Healer Ainsworth would probably have a more nuanced answer, but I think time will help clarify that. As you continue to experience emotions without the influence of amortentia, the contrast between what's real and what was manufactured will become clearer. I hope so, Harry said quietly. Because right now, I'm not sure I trust any of my feelings. The following days fell into a new routine. Mornings were spent in classes, where professors maintained a careful balance between normal expectations and consideration for Harry's situation. Afternoons often included sessions with Healer Ainsworth, who guided Harry through exercises designed to help him reconnect with his authentic emotions and rebuild trust in his own perceptions. Evenings were devoted to homework and increasingly normal interactions with friends. The initial shock in Gryffindor Tower had gradually given way to a protective normality, with housemates treating Harry much as they always had while remaining vigilant about his food and drink. Neville had taken it upon himself to teach detection charms to every Gryffindor, creating an informal security network that Harry found both touching and sad. For days before Ginny's scheduled hearing, Harry received an unexpected visitor during his morning session with Healer Ainsworth. Percy Weasley arrived bearing an official ministry folder and an uncharacteristically humble demeanor. Mr. Potter, Percy greeted him formally after being admitted to the private room McGonagall had designated for Harry's therapy sessions. I apologize for the interruption, but I've been asked to deliver this directly to you. Harry accepted the folder warily. What is it? Your victim impact statement for the Wizengamot hearing, Percy explained. Should you choose to submit one? It's entirely optional, but the Chief Warlock wanted to ensure you had the opportunity. Harry stared at the folder, conflicted. He had deliberately avoided thinking about what he might say if given the chance to address the Wizengamot regarding Ginny's actions. You don't need to decide now, Healer Ainsworth interjected, noting Harry's discomfort. The statement can be submitted up to 24 hours before the hearing. Percy nodded in agreement. Precisely. I merely wanted to deliver it personally and to. He hesitated, his usual pomposity giving way to genuine emotion. To tell you how deeply sorry I am for what my sister and mother did to you, Harry. The use of his first name, rare from the formal Percy, caught Harry's attention. Thank you, he said simply, unsure what else to add. Percy seemed to struggle with himself before continuing. I know I haven't always been the most supportive person in your life. I've been wrong about many things, particularly regarding you-know-who's return and Dumbledore's credibility. He straightened his shoulders. But I want you to know that I stand unequivocally with you in this matter. What was done to you was unconscionable, and I have personally ensured that all legal proceedings will be conducted with the utmost propriety. Coming from Percy, this declaration of support through bureaucratic thoroughness was almost touching. I appreciate that, Percy. Really. After Percy left, Healer Ainsworth gently steered the conversation toward the victim impact statement. How do you feel about potentially addressing the Wizengamot, even if only through written words? Harry considered the question honestly. Confused. Part of me wants to make sure they understand exactly what this did to me, not just the physical symptoms, but the violation of trust, the questioning of my own thoughts and feelings. But another part doesn't want to expose that vulnerability, especially knowing the statement would likely become public record. Both reactions are entirely valid, Ainsworth assured him. There's no right or wrong decision here, Harry. The statement is an opportunity, not an obligation. What do victims usually do? Harry asked. In cases like mine. Ainsworth's expression softened with sympathy. There are very few cases precisely like yours, given the duration and intensity of the potioning. But generally, victims find value in articulating the impact of what was done to them, whether or not they choose to share those words with the court. This perspective hadn't occurred to Harry. So writing it might be helpful even if I don't submit it? Exactly, Ainsworth confirmed. Putting your experience into words can be a powerful step in processing trauma, regardless of who else reads those words. With that encouragement, Harry began working on his statement that evening, sitting alone by the fire in the Gryffindor common room long after most students had gone to bed. The words came slowly at first, haltingly, but gradually gained momentum as he allowed himself to fully articulate what the past months had meant for him. He wrote about the fog that had descended on his mind, the foreign thoughts and feelings that had appeared without context or foundation. He described the disorienting sensation of watching himself make decisions he didn't fully understand, of feeling emotions that seemed simultaneously overwhelming and oddly hollow. He detailed the physical symptoms, the racing heart, the compulsive focus on Ginny's presence, the inability to concentrate on anything else when she was near. Most difficultly, he confronted the aftermath, the fundamental questioning of his own perceptions, the paranoia about food and drink, the shattered trust in people he had considered family. He wrote about waking up each morning and having to remind himself that his thoughts were finally his own again, that the manufactured obsession had been purged from his system. By the time he finished, dawn was breaking outside the tower windows, and the parchment before him was filled with raw, honest testimony to what had been stolen from him, not just months of his life, but the basic security of knowing his mind was his own. Harry read through the statement once more, then carefully folded it and placed it in the official folder Percy had provided. Whether or not he decided to submit it to the Wizengamot, writing it had served its purpose. For the first time since his magic had violently rejected Ginny's kiss, he felt a sense of reclamation, of putting into words what had been done to him and, in doing so, beginning to move beyond it. The day of Ginny's hearing arrived with a tension that permeated the entire castle. Classes proceeded as scheduled, but conversations were subdued, attention wandering as students and teachers alike wondered what was transpiring in courtroom 10 at the Ministry of Magic. Harry had ultimately decided to submit his victim impact statement, encouraged by both Healer Ainsworth and Hermione after they read the final version. He had declined to attend the hearing in person, unwilling to subject himself to the spectacle it would inevitably become, but had asked to be informed of the outcome. That information came during dinner, delivered by Professor McGonagall, who approached the Gryffindor table with an official-looking parchment in hand. "Mr. Potter," she said quietly, "the Wizengamot has concluded Miss Weasley's hearing. As you requested information on the outcome, I have been asked to provide you with this summary." Harry accepted the parchment with steady hands, aware of the hushed attention from students nearby. Hermione and Ron flanked him protectively as he unrolled the document and began to read. The formal legal language detailed Ginny's guilty plea to all charges, sustained magical coercion through potioning, brewing restricted potions without a license, and administering potions without consent. The Wizengamot had accepted the plea agreement, sentencing her to 18 months in the juvenile rehabilitation facility at Cairnholm, followed by 3 years of probation. Additionally, she would be permanently restricted from purchasing, possessing, or brewing 27 key potions ingredients commonly used in mind-altering concoctions. Most surprisingly, the document noted that his victim impact statement had been instrumental in contextualizing the severity of the offense, and had led to the addition of a mandatory therapeutic component to Ginny's sentence, focusing specifically on consent and autonomy. "They listened," Harry said softly, somewhat surprised. "They actually took it seriously." "Of course they did," Hermione replied. "What was done to you was serious, Harry." "Criminal." McGonagall nodded in agreement. "Your statement was quite powerful, Potter. I'm told several members of the Wizengamot were visibly moved. The knowledge that his words had made an impact, had potentially helped ensure Ginny received not just punishment but intervention that might prevent her from harming others, provided an unexpected sense of closure. It hadn't been about vengeance, but justice, and perhaps prevention. "Thank you for bringing this, Professor," Harry said, carefully re-rolling the parchment. "There is one additional matter," McGonagall added, lowering her voice further. "Molly Weasley's hearing has been expedited at her request. It is scheduled for tomorrow morning. She has apparently decided to plead guilty to all charges rather than contest the evidence. Ron made a small, pained sound beside Harry. Despite everything, Molly was still his mother, and her imminent sentencing to Azkaban could not be easy for him to contemplate. "Do you want to go home for it?" Harry asked Ron quietly after McGonagall had departed. "To be with your dad and brothers?" Ron looked startled by the offer. "I hadn't thought about it. Dad didn't mention anything about us attending." "You could still ask McGonagall for permission," Harry suggested. "If you wanted to be there." The fact that Harry was the one offering this, encouraging Ron to support his family despite what Molly had done, wasn't lost on anyone. Ron's eyes glistened briefly before he blinked rapidly. "Thanks, mate," he said hoarsely. "But I think I'll stay here. Dad says he and Bill are handling it, and—" He trailed off, unable to articulate the complex emotions around potentially watching his mother being sentenced to Azkaban. Harry nodded understanding. "If you change your mind, I'm sure McGonagall would arrange it." Later that evening, as news of Ginny's sentencing spread throughout the school, Harry found himself the recipient of awkward but well-intentioned support from unexpected quarters. Draco Malfoy approached him in the library, where Harry was researching a transfiguration essay. "Potter," Malfoy said, his usual drawl noticeably absent. "Heard about the Weaslett sentencing." Harry tensed, anticipating mockery or gloating. "What about it, Malfoy?" To his surprise, Malfoy's expression held no malice, only a strange solemnity. 18 months seems light, given what she did." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "My mother was outraged when she heard the full story. Said love potions should be classified as unforgivables, given their effect on free will." The unexpected alliance with Narcissa Malfoy on this issue momentarily left Harry speechless. "I didn't expect that perspective from your family." "Yes, well," Malfoy replied stiffly, "contrary to what you might believe, Potter, old wizarding families typically have strong views on matters of consent and coercion. Using love potions to secure a marriage would be considered utterly dishonorable." Before Harry could respond to this surprising revelation, Malfoy continued, "In any case, I merely wanted to say that while we have our differences, what was done to you was unconscionable, and no wizard should have to endure such a violation." With that oddly formal declaration of support, Malfoy departed, leaving Harry to ponder this strange new world where Draco Malfoy offered sympathy and Narcissa Malfoy advocated for classifying love potions as unforgivable curses. "The world's gone mad," Harry muttered to himself, returning to his essay. Yet the interaction with Malfoy represented something significant, a shift in how the wizarding world viewed love potions. What had once been treated as harmless mischief, even romantic, was being reconsidered in light of what had happened to Harry. The Daily Prophet had run multiple opinion pieces questioning why substances that overrode consent were sold openly in joke shops, why their use was portrayed humorously in literature and entertainment. Perhaps some good might come from his ordeal after all, a re-evaluation of cultural attitudes that had normalized what was, at its core, magical assault. The following day brought news of Molly Weasley's sentencing, 3 years in Azkaban's medium security wing, followed by 5 years of probation and permanent restrictions on potions brewing. Ron received the news by a letter from his father, delivered during breakfast. He read it silently, his face pale, before wordlessly passing it to Harry and Hermione. Arthur's handwriting was less neat than usual, betraying his emotional state as he detailed the hearing's outcome. He explained that Molly had indeed pleaded guilty to all charges, offering no defense beyond stating that she believed she was helping 2 young people toward their destiny. The Wisingamat had found this rationalization disturbing rather than mitigating, noting in their sentencing remarks that it demonstrated a fundamental failure to recognize the severity of overriding another person's autonomy. 3 years, Ron said hollowly when Harry handed the letter back. "My mother is going to Azkaban for 3 years." "I'm sorry, Ron," Harry said, and meant it. Whatever Molly had done, she was still Ron's mother, and her actions had victimized her children as well, albeit differently. Ron shook his head. "Don't apologize. She did this to herself. To all of us. He folded the letter carefully, tucking it into his robes. Dad says the divorce will be finalized next week. He's not waiting for her to serve her sentence. The magnitude of how Molly and Ginny's actions had torn apart their family was difficult to fully comprehend. Within weeks, the warm, welcoming household Harry had known at the Burrow had fractured beyond recognition, Ginny in rehabilitation, Molly in Azkaban, Arthur divorcing his wife of nearly 30 years. "Is your dad going to stay at the Burrow?" Harry asked, realizing he hadn't considered the practical implications for the Weasley family's living situation. "For now," Ron confirmed. "But he's talking about selling it eventually. Too many memories, he says. Bill has offered to help him find something smaller, closer to London." Another loss, Harry realized. The Burrow itself, a place that had represented family and belonging to him for years, would likely be sold, becoming just another memory of what had been destroyed by love potions and violated trust. Later that day, during his session with healer Ainsworth, Harry found himself contemplating the ripple effects of Ginny and Molly's actions. "It's like they dropped a stone in a pond," he said, "and the ripples just keep spreading, affecting more and more people." Ainsworth nodded thoughtfully. "That's an apt metaphor. Actions based on violation and coercion often have far-reaching consequences beyond what the perpetrators anticipate or intend." "I never wanted the Weasley family torn apart," Harry admitted. "Despite what Ginny and Mrs. Weasley did, I still care about the others." "That speaks to your capacity for empathy, Harry. You can recognize that while you were the primary victim, others have also been harmed by what happened." Ainsworth leaned forward slightly. "How are you feeling about the sentencing outcomes?" Harry considered the question carefully. "Relieved, I think. Not because I wanted them punished, exactly, but because there are consequences. Because what happened to me was taken seriously." He hesitated. "And hopeful, maybe. That something good might come from all this, changes in how the wizarding world views love potions." "That's a remarkably healthy perspective," Ainsworth observed. "Finding meaning in traumatic experiences can be an important part of healing." As the session continued, Harry found himself discussing something he'd noticed over the past days, a gradual shift in his emotional responses to everyday situations. "It's like colors are brighter," he explained. "Not just literally, but emotionally. I feel things more intensely, more clearly." "That's a common experience after love potion removal," Ainsworth confirmed. "Amortentia doesn't just create artificial feelings toward a specific person, it subtly dampens other emotional responses to prevent them from competing with the manufactured attraction. As your system continues to recalibrate, you'll likely notice increased emotional clarity across all areas." This explanation resonated with Harry's experience. He'd found himself laughing more genuinely at Ron's jokes, feeling more engaged in classes, experiencing deeper enjoyment of simple pleasures like flying or chocolate frogs. Even negative emotions seemed somehow cleaner, more authentic, his anger toward Ginny and Molly sharp but honest rather than the confused, foggy resentment he'd occasionally felt while under the influence of Amortentia. "Is this normal?" Harry asked hesitantly. "To feel almost better in some ways after everything that happened?" "Entirely normal," Ainsworth assured him. "You've been freed from a powerful magical compulsion that was affecting your mind and emotions for months. The relief of that freedom, the reclaiming of your authentic self, can indeed feel positive despite the traumatic circumstances that led to it." This validation helped ease a guilt Harry hadn't fully articulated, that finding any positive aspects in the aftermath of such a violation somehow diminished its seriousness. Instead, he was beginning to understand that reclaiming joy, authentic emotion, and clear thinking was not just permissible but essential to his recovery. The days following the sentencings brought a gradual return to something resembling normalcy at Hogwarts. The story faded from the front pages of the Daily Prophet, replaced by the usual political machinations and social gossip. Students still whispered when Harry passed, but with decreasing frequency and intensity. Classes and homework provided welcome structure, keeping his mind occupied with concrete challenges rather than psychological ones. 2 weeks after Ginny's sentencing, Fred and George Weasley appeared at breakfast, causing a minor stir as they made their way directly to where Harry, Ron, and Hermione were seated. "Harry," Fred greeted him, uncharacteristically serious. "Got a minute?" Harry nodded, curious about this unexpected visit. The twins led him to an empty classroom nearby, their usual mischievous expressions replaced by solemn determination. "We've been working on something," George explained once they were seated. "After what happened?" "A new product line," Fred continued. "But not jokes this time." From his pocket, George withdrew a small silver disc about the size of a galleon. "We call it the Revealer. It detects any potion in food or drink, not just love potions, but anything that shouldn't be there. More sensitive than standard detection charms," Fred added. "Works on contact, just touch it to your glass or plate." Harry accepted the disc, turning it over in his palm. It was elegantly crafted, with tiny runes etched around its circumference. "You made this?" "With help from Bill and a potion specialist we know," George confirmed. "We've been testing it extensively. It can identify 27 different potions in concentrations as low as 1 drop per liter. Which covers everything from mild calming drafts to the strongest amortentia," Fred explained. Harry was momentarily speechless, touched by what this represented. The twins had not only removed love potions from their shop but had channeled their considerable inventive talents into creating something specifically designed to prevent what had happened to him from happening to others. "This is brilliant," he said finally. "Truly brilliant." The twins exchanged pleased glances. "That's not all," George continued. "We're manufacturing them in bulk, at cost. Planning to distribute them to every pub, restaurant, and eating establishment in Wizarding Britain. Already have orders from the 3 Broomsticks, the Leaky Cauldron, and a dozen other establishments," Fred added proudly. "Rosmerta's making them standard at every table. And we want you to have the first one," George said, gesturing to the disc in Harry's hand. "Consider it a prototype, we're still refining the design for the mass production versions." The thoughtfulness of the gesture, the practical application of their skills toward preventing future violations, moved Harry deeply. "I don't know what to say. Thank you isn't enough." "No thanks needed," Fred insisted. "We should have done this years ago, before love potions in any form were part of our shop. We're also funding an awareness campaign," George added. "Posters, pamphlets, educational materials about potion consent for Hogwarts and other wizarding schools. Working with Hermione on the content," Fred explained. "She's been brilliant, actually. Terrifying, but brilliant." Harry could easily imagine Hermione throwing herself into such a project with characteristic thoroughness and passion. "She would be," he agreed with a small smile. After the twins departed, Harry found himself studying the Revealer disc thoughtfully. It represented something important, not just practical protection, but a shift in how the wizarding world viewed potioning. The fact that establishments like the 3 Broomsticks were ordering them in bulk suggested a growing recognition that customers needed and deserved protection from such interference. He slipped the disc into his pocket, feeling oddly comforted by its presence. Another small step toward reclaiming security in a world that had betrayed his trust so fundamentally. That evening, an unexpected owl arrived for Harry during dinner, a handsome tawny bearing a formal-looking envelope with the Hogwarts seal. Inside was a brief note from Dumbledore, requesting a meeting in his office after dinner. Harry showed the note to Hermione, his expression questioning. "What do you think he wants?" She frowned slightly. "Hard to say. Perhaps an update on the legal proceedings? Or to explain his role in encouraging the Weasleys," Harry suggested, unable to keep the edge from his voice. The revelation that Dumbledore had made comments to Molly suggesting Harry and Ginny would make a fortuitous match still rankled. After dinner, Harry made his way to the headmaster's office with mixed feelings. His relationship with Dumbledore had always been complicated. Respect and even affection mingled with frustration at the older wizard's tendency towards secrets and manipulation. Now, in the aftermath of learning how many people had interfered with his life without his knowledge or consent, Harry approached the meeting with newfound wariness. "Enter," Dumbledore called in response to Harry's knock, his voice lacking its usual jovial tone. The headmaster's office appeared unchanged, silver instruments whirring softly, Fawkes preening on his perch, portraits of former headmasters pretending not to eavesdrop. Dumbledore himself sat behind his desk, looking older and more tired than Harry had ever seen him. "Harry," he greeted, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. "Thank you for coming. I hope I haven't interrupted any pressing plans." "Just homework," Harry replied neutrally, taking the offered seat but maintaining a careful distance. "Your note said you wanted to see me." Dumbledore nodded, his expression grave. "Indeed. I owe you an explanation, and more importantly, an apology." This direct approach surprised Harry, who had expected the headmaster's usual circuitous conversation style. "For what, specifically?" he asked, not willing to make assumptions. "For my role, however unintentional, in encouraging Molly Weasley's matchmaking efforts regarding you and Ginevra." Dumbledore's blue eyes held none of their usual twinkle. "While I never suggested or condoned the use of love potions, I did make comments to Molly indicating I thought you and Ginevra might form a suitable attachment." "Why?" Harry asked, the simple question carrying the weight of his confusion and hurt. "Why did you feel the need to engineer my romantic life?" Dumbledore sighed heavily. "I would like to say it was merely benign interest in your happiness, but that would not be entirely truthful. The reality is more complex, and less defensible." He rose from his chair, moving to the window that overlooked the Hogwarts grounds. "I have spent many years contemplating how to ensure your survival and ultimate victory against Voldemort, Harry. In doing so, I have sometimes crossed lines I should not have crossed, made decisions I had no right to make. Like suggesting to Mrs. Weasley that Ginny and I should be together." Harry pressed. "Yes," Dumbledore admitted. "I believed, wrongly, that a strong connection to a wizarding family like the Weasleys would provide you with additional protection and support for the challenges ahead. I saw how Ronald's friendship had benefited you, and I thought perhaps a deeper connection to the family would serve similar purposes." The cold calculation behind this reasoning sent a chill through Harry. "So it wasn't about my happiness at all. It was about creating another weapon against Voldemort." Dumbledore turned from the window, his expression pained. "Not a weapon, Harry. Never that. But yes, strategic considerations influenced my thinking in ways that were inappropriate. I had no right to attempt to influence your personal relationships, even indirectly." "No, you didn't," Harry agreed, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. "And while you may not have suggested love potions specifically, your encouragement clearly contributed to Mrs. Weasley's belief that manipulating me toward Ginny was acceptable." "A burden I will carry," Dumbledore acknowledged, returning to his chair. "When I learned the full extent of what had been done to you, I was horrified, Harry. Not just by Ginevra and Molly's actions, but by my own complicity, however unintentional." The headmaster's apparent sincerity gave Harry pause. Dumbledore had made many mistakes in his handling of Harry's life, but this admission of wrongdoing was unprecedented in its directness. "I'm not sure I can forgive you for this," Harry said honestly. "Not yet, anyway. It's one thing to keep information from me about prophecies and Voldemort. It's another to try to manipulate who I love." "I understand," Dumbledore said quietly. "I do not ask for forgiveness, merely the opportunity to make amends in whatever way you deem appropriate." Harry considered this. "You can start by never doing anything like this again. No more manipulation, no more orchestrating my personal life. No more treating me like a chess piece to be moved around the board. You have my word," Dumbledore promised, his expression solemn. "I have learned, belatedly, I admit, that such manipulations are not only wrong but ultimately counterproductive. Your greatest strength has always been your capacity for love and friendship forged authentically, not through coercion or engineering." It was perhaps the most direct acknowledgement Dumbledore had ever made of the fundamental flaw in his approach to Harry's life. For all his wisdom and power, the headmaster had repeatedly underestimated the importance of Harry's agency, his right to make his own choices based on complete information. "There's something else," Harry said, remembering a question that had been troubling him. "Did you know? About the love potions, I mean. Before my magic rejected Ginny's kiss." Dumbledore's expression turned genuinely shocked. "No, Harry. Had I known, I would have intervened immediately. Love potions are serious magical violations, not harmless pranks. I would never have permitted such abuse to continue had I been aware of it." Harry studied the headmaster's face, searching for any sign of deception, but found only genuine distress. "I believe you," he said finally. "But that doesn't change the fact that your encouragement of Mrs. Weasley contributed to what happened." "No, it does not," Dumbledore agreed somberly. "And for that, I can only offer my deepest regret and the promise to do better in the future." The conversation continued for some time, covering the legal proceedings, Harry's ongoing recovery with Healer Ainsworth, and the wider implications of the case for Wizarding Society's attitude toward love potions. Throughout, Dumbledore maintained an uncharacteristic directness, answering Harry's questions without evasion or manipulation. When Harry finally left the headmaster's office, he felt a complex mix of emotions: lingering anger at Dumbledore's interference, cautious appreciation for his honesty, and a new determination to ensure his life remained his own going forward. The conversation hadn't resolved everything between them, but it represented a shift toward greater transparency and respect that Harry found cautiously encouraging. The remainder of the term passed in a blur of classes, therapy sessions, and gradually normalizing social interactions. Harry continued to use the twins' revealer disc before meals, but more out of habit than acute fear. The nightmares diminished in frequency and intensity, replaced by increasingly normal sleep patterns. His grades improved as the fog of amortentia completely dissipated, allowing him to focus with greater clarity than he had in months. The Christmas holiday approached, bringing with it the question of where Harry would spend the break. The Burrow, his usual destination, was no longer an option. Arthur was in the process of selling the property, and the family was scattered in the aftermath of Molly and Ginny's sentencing. "You'll come home with me, of course," Hermione declared when the subject arose. "My parents already wrote saying they'd be delighted to have you." Ron nodded encouragingly. "I'm going to Bill's new place in London. Charlie's coming from Romania, and the twins will be there too. Percy's visiting for Christmas dinner." He hesitated. "You'd be welcome too, Harry, if you wanted. Bill specifically mentioned it." The invitation meant more than Ron could know, the confirmation that despite everything that had happened, the remaining Weasleys still considered him family. Yet Harry found himself more drawn to the prospect of a quieter holiday with the Grangers, away from the complicated emotions surrounding the Weasley family. "Thanks, Ron. Tell Bill I really appreciate it. Maybe I could visit for a day during the break. But I think I'll take Hermione up on her offer for the main holiday." Ron seemed to understand the complexity behind Harry's choice. "Course, mate. Bill said the invitation stands whenever you're ready, no pressure." As the Hogwarts Express carried them toward London for the holiday break, Harry found himself reflecting on the extraordinary term that was ending. The violent rejection of Ginny's kiss had shattered the false reality created by months of potioning, revealing painful truths but also setting him on a path toward genuine healing. The betrayal remained painful, perhaps would always remain so, but it no longer dominated his thoughts. The potions were gone from his system, their lingering psychological effects diminishing with each passing day. More importantly, Harry was reclaiming trust in his own perceptions, his own feelings, his own choices. Through the train window, he watched the winter landscape pass by, snow-covered fields and forests glittering in the pale December sun. Beside him, Hermione read peacefully while across the compartment, Ron and Neville played a game of exploding snap. Normal, ordinary moments that now held extraordinary value for their very authenticity. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and with Voldemort still at large, Harry harbored no illusions about the difficulties to come. He would face them with clear eyes and an unmanipulated mind. His thoughts, his feelings, his choices were his own once more. In that reclamation lay not just healing but power, the power of self-determination that no potion could ever truly conquer. As the train continued its journey through the winter landscape, Harry Potter allowed himself to feel something that had been absent far too long, hope, untainted and authentic, for the future he would choose for himself. Chapter 3, Reclamation. Snow fell in lazy spirals outside the Grangers' living room window, coating the quiet suburban street in pristine white. Harry sat curled in an armchair, a mug of hot chocolate warming his hands as he watched the peaceful scene. Christmas music played softly from the stereo, and the scent of cinnamon and pine filled the air. 3 days into the holiday break, and already Harry felt more centered than he had in months. More biscuits? Dr. Emma Granger appeared in the doorway, offering a plate of homemade gingerbread. "Thanks," Harry said, accepting one gratefully. "These are amazing." Emma smiled, settling onto the sofa across from him. "My grandmother's recipe. Secret ingredient is black pepper, gives them a bit of kick." The casual normality of the moment struck Harry with unexpected force. Here, in this Muggle home with its electric lights and television, love potions and magical coercion seemed distant, almost unreal. No one was watching him with pity or curiosity. No whispers followed him down corridors. He was just Harry, a friend of their daughter, welcome at their table. "You look more relaxed today," Emma observed, her tone gentle but matter-of-fact. As a dentist, she possessed a clinical eye and straightforward manner that Harry found comforting. No dancing around difficult subjects, just honest observation. "I feel it," Harry admitted. "Being away from everything, it helps." Emma nodded understanding. Hermione had explained the situation to her parents before Harry's arrival, with his permission, so they understood the broad strokes of what had happened without requiring Harry to relive it through explanation. "Sometimes distance is the best medicine," Emma said. "Gives the mind room to heal without constant reminders." From the kitchen came the sound of laughter, Hermione and her father engaged in what had become a daily baking project. Today was Christmas pudding, a tradition in the Granger household that apparently involved equal parts culinary skill and good-natured bickering about proper stirring techniques. "They'll be at it for hours," Emma said fondly. "Richard insists the pudding must be stirred clockwise exactly 43 times, while Hermione maintains that's complete nonsense." Harry smiled, warmed by the ordinary family dynamic. "Who usually wins?" "Oh, Richard pretends to concede, then stirs it 43 times when Hermione isn't looking," Emma confided with a wink. "And she knows perfectly well he does it, but pretends not to notice. It's been the same dance since she was 8. These glimpses into Hermione's childhood fascinated Harry. He'd known her for years but had never fully pictured her life beyond Hogwarts, the loving home that had shaped his brilliant, principled friend. "You've raised an amazing daughter," Harry said sincerely. "I don't know what I'd have done without her these past months." Emma's expression softened. Hermione has always had a fierce sense of justice and loyalty. Even as a little girl, she couldn't bear to see anyone treated unfairly. She studied Harry thoughtfully. "She cares about you very much, you know." Something in her tone made Harry glance up sharply, but Emma's face revealed nothing beyond gentle observation. Before he could respond, Hermione herself appeared, dusted with flour and looking exasperated. "Dad is impossible," she declared, flopping onto the sofa beside her mother. "He's quoting made-up Victorian pudding superstitions again." "They're not made up," Richard Granger called from the kitchen. "My grandmother swore by them." "Your grandmother also thought television would steal people's souls," Hermione retorted, then turned to Harry with a smile. "How's the hot chocolate?" "Mum makes it properly, with actual chocolate, not powder." "It's perfect," Harry assured her. "Everything has been." Hermione's expression turned serious. "Really? You're not just saying that?" "Really," Harry confirmed. "Being here, it's exactly what I needed." Relief flickered across Hermione's face. She'd been anxious about the holiday arrangements, worried that Harry might find a Muggle Christmas lacking after his previous experiences at the Burrow with its magical chaos and warmth. But Harry found the Granger's home offered something equally valuable: normality, calm, and a complete absence of magical manipulation. The days settled into a pleasant rhythm. Mornings were spent helping with Christmas preparations or exploring the nearby village. Afternoons often found Harry and Hermione reading companionably in the living room or playing board games with her parents. Evenings brought films on the television or music on the stereo, simple pleasures Harry had rarely experienced in either the Wizarding World or at the Dursleys. 5 days before Christmas, an owl arrived bearing a letter from Healer Ainsworth. Harry took it to the guest room to read in privacy, appreciating that the Grangers never hovered or pried. "Dear Mr. Potter, I hope this finds you well and that your holiday is providing the respite we discussed. While our formal sessions are paused until your return to Hogwarts, I wanted to check on your progress with the emotional identification exercises we began working on before the break. Have you been keeping the journal as suggested? Remember that the purpose is not to catalog every feeling, but rather to note moments when emotions seem particularly clear or authentic to you. This practice helps rebuild trust in your own perceptions after the interference you experienced. I've also enclosed a few additional exercises you might find helpful during this time away from school. The holiday season can bring complex emotions even under normal circumstances, and after your experience, you may find certain feelings intensified or unexpected. Please feel free to write if you have questions or concerns. While I encourage you to embrace this break as a time for healing, I remain available should you need support. Wishing you peaceful holidays, Healer Eliza Ainsworth. Harry set aside the letter and retrieved the journal from his trunk. Unlike the diary that had documented his violation, this small leather-bound book served as a record of reclamation, moments when he felt clearly himself, emotions he recognized as authentically his own. The entries were brief but revealing. December 18th, laughed at one of Richard's terrible jokes until my sides hurt. The laughter felt clean, unforced. No foggy edges. December 19th, felt genuinely annoyed when Hermione beat me at chess for the 3rd time. Not angry, just competitively frustrated. The feeling was sharp and clear. December 20th, woke from a nightmare about the graveyard. Terrible but familiar fear. Recognized it immediately as my own, not manufactured. Oddly comforting in its authenticity. December 21st, watched sunset from the back garden. Moment of pure peace. No thoughts of anything but the colors in the sky. Present in my own mind. He added a new entry, December 22nd, felt protected and cared for when Emma offered hot chocolate and didn't push for conversation. Simple kindness with no expectations. Recognized gratitude as clean, uncomplicated. These small moments of emotional clarity had become precious to Harry, each one a stepping stone in rebuilding trust in his own perceptions. Healer Ainsworth had explained that after prolonged potioning, victims often struggled to identify which feelings were truly their own. The artificial emotions created by amortentia could linger psychologically even after the potion itself was purged from the system. The journal helped separate authentic emotions from echoes of the manufactured ones, gradually strengthening Harry's confidence in his own mind. It was slow work, but satisfying in its tangible progress. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Harry?" Hermione's voice. "There's another owl for you. This one's from Bill Weasley." Harry tucked the journal away and opened the door. Hermione handed him a scroll tied with simple twine, her expression carefully neutral. She'd been cautious about mentioning the Weasleys, uncertain how Harry felt about the family after everything that had happened. "Thanks," he said, accepting the scroll. "I'll read it now." Alone again, Harry unrolled the parchment to find Bill's neat, professional handwriting. "Dear Harry, I hope your holiday is going well with the Grangers. Ron mentioned you might be willing to visit us for a day during the break, which would be wonderful if you feel comfortable doing so. We've settled into the new place in London, a townhouse in a mixed magical/muggle neighborhood that's working well for all of us. Dad is staying here until he decides on a more permanent arrangement, and Charlie's arrived from Romania. The twins pop in and out constantly, and Percy has promised to join us for Christmas dinner. I want to assure you that this invitation comes with no expectations or pressure. We all understand if you're not ready for this kind of visit, or if you never will be. Your well-being comes first, and we respect whatever boundaries you need to establish. If you are interested in visiting, perhaps December 23rd would work. Just for afternoon tea, nothing elaborate or overwhelming. The full address is Weasley London Residence, should you decide to come. Whatever you decide, please know that our thoughts are with you this holiday season. Warmest regards, Bill Weasley. Harry read the letter twice, noting the careful wording, the explicit acknowledgement of his potential discomfort, the clear statement that no one would be hurt if he declined. Bill's consideration touched him deeply. The prospect of seeing the Weasleys, even those who had been completely innocent of Ginny and Molly's actions, brought complicated emotions. Part of him missed them terribly, particularly Arthur, whose kind heart and genuine interest in Harry had always made him feel valued. Another part feared that being surrounded by redheads would trigger painful associations with Ginny and the violations he'd suffered. Yet avoidance wouldn't lead to healing, Harry knew. Healer Ainsworth had emphasized that reclaiming his life meant making choices based on his authentic desires rather than allowing fear to dictate his actions. After careful consideration, Harry wrote a response accepting the invitation. Whatever discomfort he might feel would be worth it to maintain connections with the Weasley men who had shown him nothing but support and respect throughout the ordeal. The morning of December 23rd arrived with a fresh snowfall and a knot of anxiety in Harry's stomach. Hermione found him staring out the guest room window, already dressed but clearly hesitant about the day ahead. "You don't have to go," she reminded him gently. "They'd understand." Harry shook his head. "I want to go. It's just complicated," Hermione finished when he trailed off. "Of course it is. But remember what Healer Ainsworth said about distinguishing between individuals and groups. The actions of Ginny and Mrs. Weasley don't reflect on Bill or Charlie or the others." "I know that intellectually," Harry agreed. "It's the emotional part that's harder." Hermione considered this. Maybe that's the point of today, starting to reconnect those intellectual understandings with emotional ones. Creating new associations. Her insight, as usual, cut through his confusion to the heart of the matter. "You're right," Harry said, feeling some of the tension ease from his shoulders. "And if it becomes too much, I can always leave." "Exactly. You have agency here, Harry. Complete control over how long you stay and how much you engage." Agency. Control. The words resonated deeply after months of having both systematically undermined by love potions. Today wasn't just about visiting the Weasleys, it was about reclaiming his right to choose who to spend time with based on his genuine feelings rather than manufactured ones. The Grangers' fireplace had been temporarily connected to the Fleur network for the holiday, allowing Harry to travel directly to Bill's London residence. After assuring Emma and Richard he'd be back for dinner, Harry took a handful of Fleur powder, called out the address, and stepped into the green flames. He emerged into a bright, airy living room that bore little resemblance to the cluttered warmth of the burrow. Modern furniture in neutral tones occupied the space, accented by colorful artifacts that Harry suspected came from Bill's work as a cursebreaker. Large windows overlooked a small garden where enchanted lights twinkled in the snow-covered shrubs despite the early hour. "Harry." Bill stepped forward from where he'd been waiting near the fireplace, his scarred face breaking into a warm smile. He made no move to hug Harry, instead offering his hand. "Welcome. Thank you for coming." Harry shook Bill's hand, appreciating the older man's understanding of his need for physical boundaries. "Thanks for inviting me. This is a nice place. Just moved in last month," Bill explained, gesturing for Harry to follow him. "It's a bit of a change from shells and sand, but London has its advantages. Tea? Or hot chocolate if you prefer?" "Tea would be great," Harry said, following Bill through to a kitchen where Arthur Weasley sat at a round table, poring over what appeared to be Muggle real estate listings. Arthur looked up as they entered, his face lighting with genuine pleasure. "Harry. Wonderful to see you." Like Bill, he remained seated, respecting Harry's space while still conveying welcome. "Hello, Mr. Weasley," Harry said, suddenly aware of how much he'd missed Arthur's kind presence. "How are you?" Arthur's smile turned wistful. "Managing, day by day. And please, it's Arthur now. I think we've moved well beyond formalities, don't you?" The simple request carried emotional weight for both of them. Harry nodded, throat unexpectedly tight. "Arthur, then." As Bill prepared tea, Charlie emerged from what appeared to be a study, his muscular frame filling the doorway. "Thought I heard your voice, Harry. Good to see you." His handshake was firm, his dragon-scarred hands warm and calloused. "Ron's upstairs, said he wanted to give you a minute to settle in before he bombarded you with Quidditch talk." Harry appreciated the consideration behind this. Ron's excitement could sometimes be overwhelming even under normal circumstances. They settled around the kitchen table, the conversation flowing more easily than Harry had anticipated. Bill spoke about his work with Gringotts, which had shifted from field assignments to a London-based advisory role. Charlie shared amusing stories about a particularly troublesome Romanian longhorn hatchling. Arthur discussed his plans to find a small cottage in the countryside once the burrow sold. No one mentioned Ginny or Molly. No one asked how Harry was coping or made reference to what had happened. Instead, they treated him normally, a welcome guest rather than a victim to be pitied. "Dad's become quite the property expert," Bill noted as Arthur shuffled through his listings. "Knows more about housing markets than our Gringotts analysts." Arthur looked slightly embarrassed. "Hardly expert level. Just trying to understand my options. The borough sale should be finalized after the new year, and I'd like to be settled somewhere permanent by spring." "Any particular area you're considering?" Harry asked, genuinely interested. Arthur brightened. "I'm rather drawn to Devon still, familiar territory but not too close to Ottery St. Catchpole. Somewhere with a bit of garden for experiments but near enough to Muggle shops. I've developed quite an appreciation for their supermarkets." The normalcy of the conversation was healing in its own way. These were the Weasleys Harry had known and cared about, kind, slightly eccentric, genuinely interested in others. Nothing about their interaction felt forced or uncomfortable. Ron appeared eventually, his tentative expression breaking into relief when he saw Harry comfortably engaged in conversation. "Hey mate." Didn't want to interrupt the catching up. "Not interrupting," Harry assured him, realizing with mild surprise that he genuinely meant it. "Just hearing about your dad's house hunting adventures." They moved to the living room, where a modest Christmas tree stood decorated with an eclectic mix of ornaments, some clearly handmade by Weasley children over the years, others exotic items from Bill and Charlie's travels. Harry noticed that nothing from the borough's traditional decorations had made the transition to this new space, a deliberate choice he suspected. The conversation continued easily, touching on Quidditch standings, Charlie's dragons, and Ron's stories from Hogwarts. Harry found himself relaxing further, the knot of anxiety in his stomach gradually unraveling. Being here, with these particular Weasleys in this new space that held no memories of Ginny or Molly, felt unexpectedly comfortable. The twins arrived mid-afternoon in typical whirlwind fashion, bringing boxes of pastries and news of their shop's holiday rush. Like the others, they treated Harry normally, teasing and joking but carefully avoiding physical contact or any mention of love potions or the incidents at Hogwarts. "The Revealer is selling brilliantly," Fred mentioned casually during a discussion of their business. "Restaurants can't get enough of them. Had to hire 3 new staff just to keep up with production," George added. "Thinking of expanding the protective devices line, not just potions detection but other security products." Harry felt a surge of pride in their success, particularly knowing it came from channeling their inventive talents toward protecting others from what had happened to him. "That's brilliant. You've always been geniuses with invention." The twins looked pleased but slightly embarrassed by the praise. "Speaking of which," Fred said, reaching into his pocket, "we've upgraded the prototype we gave you." He produced a sleek silver disc similar to the original Revealer but slightly smaller and more refined. More sensitive, more discreet, and now it can detect potions in a broader radius, about 6 inches rather than direct contact. We call it the Revealer Plus, George added. Limited edition, only making them for certain people. Harry accepted the device, genuinely touched by the gesture. Thank you. The original has been brilliant. Keep both, Fred insisted. Never hurts to have backup. Percy arrived last, looking stiff and formal as ever in his ministry robes but noticeably warmer toward Harry than he'd been in years past. He brought news that made the room fall momentarily silent. The Wisindamat has formally classified extended use of love potions as a form of magical coercion equivalent to a mild imperious curse, he announced after greetings were exchanged. The legislation passed unanimously this morning. Arthur's expression was complex, satisfaction mingled with pain at the circumstances that had prompted such a legal shift. That's significant. The ministry has resisted reclassification for decades. Your testimony was instrumental, Dad, Percy said quietly. And Harry's victim impact statement. Together, they provided the personal element that statistics alone couldn't convey. The room fell silent again, the unspoken reality of what had happened to Harry suddenly present despite everyone's careful avoidance of the topic. Harry felt a familiar tightness in his chest, but surprisingly, no desire to flee. Instead, he found himself wanting to acknowledge the truth directly. I'm glad something positive has come from it, he said, meeting each of their eyes in turn. If stricter laws prevent this happening to someone else, that matters. Arthur reached across the table, hesitating just short of touching Harry's arm. You're an extraordinary young man, Harry. Most people would be consumed by bitterness after what was done to you. I have those moments, Harry admitted honestly. But they don't define me. Or my relationship with all of you. The simple statement seemed to release a tension that had underlain the otherwise pleasant afternoon. Shoulders relaxed, expressions eased, as the unspoken fear that Harry might never be able to separate the innocent Weasleys from the guilty ones was laid to rest. Right, Charlie said after a moment, his practical nature reasserting itself. Who's for more tea? And I think there's treacle tart among those pastries Fred and George brought. The conversation resumed its natural flow, but with a new layer of honesty that felt healthier than the careful avoidance of difficult topics. When Ron mentioned Hogwarts, Harry found himself able to discuss the aftermath of Ginny's departure without the crushing anxiety such conversations had previously provoked. The common room feels different, he acknowledged when Ron asked. Not bad different, just quieter, I suppose. McGonagall's been brilliant about keeping gossip under control, Ron added. Gave that Romilda Vane a month of detention when she was overheard speculating about, well, details. Harry appreciated both McGonagall's intervention and Ron's discretion in not repeating whatever salacious theories Romilda had been spreading. The professors have all been supportive. Even Snape, in his own way. The afternoon passed more quickly than Harry had anticipated, and soon it was time to return to the Grangers for dinner. As he prepared to leave, each Weasley said goodbye in their own way, Arthur with warm words about seeing him soon, Charlie with a friendly clap on the shoulder that carefully avoided actual contact, the twins with promises to send him new products for testing. Bill walked him back to the fireplace, hanging back slightly from the others to speak privately. Thank you for coming, Harry. I know it couldn't have been easy. It was easier than I expected, Harry admitted. This place helps, no memories attached to it. Bill nodded understanding. That was deliberate. A fresh start for all of us. He hesitated. I hope this won't be your only visit. You'll always be welcome here, on your terms, whenever you're ready. I'd like that, Harry said, surprised to find he genuinely meant it. The day had been healing in ways he hadn't anticipated, allowing him to reclaim positive connections with the Weasley men without the shadow of what Ginny and Molly had done overwhelming those relationships. As Harry stepped back through the flue to the Grangers, he carried with him a newfound sense of possibility, that healing didn't necessarily mean cutting ties with an entire family, but rather establishing new boundaries and relationships based on mutual respect and understanding. The remainder of the holiday passed peacefully. Christmas at the Grangers proved to be a quiet, thoughtful affair, gifts that were modest but chosen with care, a dinner that was delicious without being overwhelming, and an evening spent playing board games by the fire. Harry found himself treasuring the simplicity of it all, so different from both the magical chaos of Hogwarts and the strained formal celebrations at the Dursleys. His journal entries during this period reflected growing emotional clarity. December 25th, felt genuine surprise and pleasure opening Hermione's gift. No foggy edges to the feeling, just clear happiness. Noticed I laughed without thinking about it first. December 26th, watched a film with Richard that made me cry at one point. The sadness felt clean, unmanipulated. Didn't try to hide it, just let it happen. December 27th, felt frustrated when I couldn't master the card trick Emma was teaching me. Pure, simple frustration without shame or fear attached. Recognized it, sat with it, let it pass naturally. December 28th, realized I hadn't thought about Ginny at all yesterday. Not avoiding thoughts of her, just genuinely focused on other things. Progress. These small victories accumulated, building Harry's confidence in his own perceptions and emotional responses. By the time they prepared to return to Hogwarts, he felt more grounded in himself than he had in nearly a year. The night before their departure, Hermione found Harry in the guest room, packing his trunk with the methodical care he'd developed since the incident, a way of maintaining control over his possessions after months of having his mind manipulated without his knowledge. "Need any help?" she offered, leaning against the doorframe. Harry shook his head. "Almost finished. Just making sure I haven't forgotten anything." Hermione watched him for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "You seem better. More present." "I feel it," Harry agreed, closing the trunk and sitting on the edge of the bed. "Being here helped. Your parents have been amazing." "They like you," Hermione said simply, moving to sit beside him. "Not as Harry Potter, boy who lived, but just as Harry, my friend who needed a peaceful place for Christmas." The distinction meant more than she could know. So much of Harry's life had been defined by others' perceptions of him, the hero, the chosen one, the disturbed attention seeker, depending on who was doing the labeling. Being seen simply as himself felt like another form of reclamation. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For everything. Not just the holiday, but being there through all of this. Believing me instantly when it happened." Hermione's expression turned fierce. "Of course I believed you. Your magic literally showed everyone the truth." Even before that, Harry clarified. "When I collapsed and was taken to the hospital wing. You never questioned what had happened, never tried to defend Ginny or suggest I might be overreacting." "Because I know you," Hermione said simply. "And because what she did was indefensible." The certainty in her voice warmed something deep inside Harry. After months of having his perceptions manipulated, having someone trust his experience without question had been an anchor amid the chaos. "I'm nervous about going back," he admitted. "Hogwarts is where it all happened. Where I was potioned for months without realizing it." Hermione nodded understanding. "That makes perfect sense. But remember, it's also where your magic protected you, where it finally broke through the potions and revealed the truth. There's power in that, Harry. Your core magic was stronger than hundreds of doses of amortentia." She had a point. For all the violation that had occurred at Hogwarts, it was also where his magic had finally fought back decisively, where the truth had been revealed in a way no one could deny or dismiss. "We'll be with you every step," Hermione promised. "Not just me and Ron, but Neville, Luna, the entire DA if needed. You won't face any of it alone." The journey back to Hogwarts on January 3rd brought familiar jitters but also a sense of determination. Harry found himself more aware of his surroundings on platform 9 3/4, noticing details he might have missed before, the varying expressions of parents saying goodbye, the excited chatter of first-years comparing holiday gifts, the subtle security measures implemented since Voldemort's return. On the train, their usual compartment filled quickly with friends, Ron, Neville, Luna, and eventually Dean and Seamus, all maintaining a careful normalcy that Harry deeply appreciated. The conversation flowed naturally around holiday stories, gift exchanges, and speculation about the term ahead. Only once did the subject of Ginny arise, when Luna mentioned in her characteristic direct manner, "The rehabilitation facility at Cairnholm is quite progressive, you know. They focus on rebuilding empathy through magical means rather than punishment." The compartment fell silent, everyone glancing nervously at Harry to gauge his reaction. He considered Luna's words thoughtfully, not feeling the spike of anxiety such mentions had previously triggered. "That's good," he said finally. "She needs to understand why what she did was wrong, not just be punished for it." The tension dissipated as conversations resumed, but Harry noticed the subtle looks of approval and relief from his friends. His ability to discuss Ginny calmly, without either rage or panic, represented significant progress in his healing journey. Arriving at Hogwarts brought a fresh wave of emotion. The castle silhouetted against the winter sky was both welcoming and daunting, filled with complicated memories both good and painful. Harry took a deep breath as he stepped from the carriage, grounding himself in the present moment as Healer Ainsworth had taught him. "All right?" Ron asked quietly, falling into step beside him. "Getting there," Harry replied honestly. The great hall was ablaze with floating candles, the enchanted ceiling reflecting a clear night sky studded with stars. As they made their way to the Gryffindor table, Harry was aware of eyes following him, but the intense scrutiny that had characterized the weeks after the incident had diminished considerably. Time and the holiday break had dulled the immediacy of the scandal, allowing him to move through the space with less self-consciousness. Professor McGonagall caught his eye from the staff table, offering a small nod of acknowledgement that Harry returned with genuine appreciation. Throughout everything, her unwavering support had been a constant, from ensuring his medical care to advocating for his privacy during the investigation. The welcome feast proceeded normally, with Dumbledore making his usual announcements about forbidden areas and upcoming events. The headmaster's eyes found Harry briefly during his speech, his expression conveying a complex mixture of regret and respect. Their conversation before the break had not fully resolved Harry's feelings about Dumbledore's role in encouraging Molly's matchmaking efforts, but it had established a new honesty between them that felt like progress. That night in Gryffindor Tower, Harry found the familiar surroundings both comforting and slightly unsettling. The common room where his magic had violently rejected Ginny's kiss remained the site of his public violation, but it was also where the truth had finally been revealed, where his core magic had protected him when nothing else could. He deliberately sat in the armchair nearest the fire, the same spot where he had written his victim impact statement, reclaiming the space on his own terms. Neville joined him shortly, offering a small potted plant with unusual silver-blue leaves. "Argentum salvus," Neville explained as Harry examined it curiously. "Silver sage. It's not just decorative, the leaves change color in the presence of most mind-altering substances. Thought it might be useful for your bedside table." The thoughtfulness of the gift moved Harry deeply. "Thanks, Neville. That's brilliant." Neville shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. "Been growing it in the greenhouses since everything happened. Professor Sprout helped me accelerate its development so it'd be mature enough to detect potions reliably." Harry placed the plant carefully on the table beside him, appreciating that Neville, like the twins with their revealer, had channeled his specific talents into creating something protective. "I'm lucky to have friends like you," he said simply. The first week back at Hogwarts brought a return to routine, classes, homework, Quidditch practice, but with subtle differences that reflected Harry's ongoing healing process. He resumed sessions with Healer Ainsworth twice weekly, now focusing on building resilience rather than simply managing acute trauma symptoms. "You've made remarkable progress," Ainsworth observed during their first session back. "Your holiday journals show significant improvement in emotional identification and regulation." The time away helped, Harry acknowledged. "Being somewhere with no associations to what happened." "And your visit with the Weasley family? How did that affect you?" Harry considered this carefully. "Better than I expected. Seeing them in a new environment, one with no connection to Ginny or Mrs. Weasley, made it easier to separate them from what happened. That's excellent progress in differentiation, Ainsworth noted approvingly. The ability to distinguish between individuals rather than associating trauma with an entire group is an important step in recovery. They discussed Harry's concerns about returning to Hogwarts, particularly the lingering discomfort he felt in certain locations, the Gryffindor common room, the great hall table where Ginny had often sat beside him, the Quidditch pitch where they had played together. Reclaiming spaces is an ongoing process, Ainsworth advised. Don't rush it, but don't avoid these places either. Each time you engage with these locations on your own terms, you diminish their power to trigger distress. This advice proved valuable as Harry deliberately began spending time in previously uncomfortable locations, gradually replacing associations of violation with new memories of autonomy and choice. The Quidditch pitch, in particular, became a place of reclamation as he threw himself into team practices, rediscovering the pure joy of flying that had temporarily been tainted by connections to Ginny. 3 weeks into the term, an official owl arrived during breakfast bearing ministry seals. Harry opened it with steady hands, aware of Ron and Hermione's concerned gazes. It's from the DMLE, he explained, scanning the formal document. An update on the legal proceedings. The letter detailed the aftermath of both Ginny and Molly's sentencings. Ginny had been transferred to the rehabilitation facility at Cairnholm, where she was engaging appropriately with therapeutic interventions, according to facility reports. Molly was serving her sentence in Azkaban's medium security wing, with visiting privileges limited to immediate family once monthly. More significantly, the letter informed Harry that his victim impact statement, along with the evidence from the case, had been instrumental in prompting a comprehensive review of love potion regulation in Wizarding Britain. A special committee had been formed to develop new legislation addressing the brewing, sale, and use of all mind-altering substances, with particular focus on those affecting consent and autonomy. They're asking if I'd be willing to consult on the new regulations, Harry said, surprised by the request. Not publicly, they specifically say they want my input but would keep my involvement confidential. That's a meaningful opportunity, Hermione observed. To help shape laws that might prevent what happened to you from happening to others. Harry nodded slowly, considering the request. A year ago, he might have recoiled from any involvement with ministry bureaucracy. Now, he saw the potential for his painful experience to create positive change. I think I will, he decided. If my perspective can help make these laws effective, that's worth the discomfort of revisiting what happened. The decision marked another step in his healing journey, transforming his victimization into advocacy, using his experience to protect others rather than allowing it to define or diminish him. February brought heavy snowfalls that blanketed the Hogwarts grounds in pristine white. One crisp Saturday morning, Harry found himself walking alone by the frozen lake, appreciating the quiet beauty of the winter landscape. His solitary walks had become a form of meditation, opportunities to check in with himself and assess his emotional state without distraction. Today, he felt calm, centered in a way that had once seemed impossible in the immediate aftermath of his magic's violent rejection of Ginny's kiss. The anger hadn't disappeared entirely, perhaps never would, but it had transformed from a consuming rage into a focused determination to ensure his experience led to meaningful change. Harry Potter. The dreamy voice startled him from his thoughts. Luna Lovegood stood nearby, apparently examining ice formations along the lakeshore, her pale hair whipping in the winter wind. Luna, he greeted her with genuine warmth. Didn't see you there. I was conversing with the ice sprites, she explained matter-of-factly. They're quite vocal during full moon cycles, though most people can't hear them. Rather than dismissing her claim as he might have once done, Harry simply nodded. Luna's unique perspective on the world had proven valuable too many times to discount. You're looking better, she observed, studying him with her protuberant silver eyes. Less fractured around the edges. The description was so peculiarly accurate that Harry laughed. That's exactly how it feels. Like pieces of me are fitting together properly again. Luna nodded as though this were perfectly ordinary. Magic knows when something isn't right, you know. Your core was fighting the foreign influence all along, even when your conscious mind couldn't recognize it. That's what Healer Ainsworth says too, Harry acknowledged, falling into step beside Luna as they continued along the shoreline. My accidental magic incidents were actually my core trying to protect me. Your magic is particularly attuned to threats, Luna observed. It's had to be, given your life experiences. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the crunch of snow beneath their feet the only sound. Luna's presence was soothing in its simplicity. She neither avoided difficult topics out of awkwardness nor forced conversations about them out of curiosity. She simply existed alongside him, accepting whatever level of interaction he offered. I've been corresponding with Ginny, Luna said suddenly, her tone as matter-of-fact as if discussing the weather. Harry stopped walking, surprised by both the statement and his own reaction to it, curiosity rather than anger or anxiety. You have? Luna nodded. The rehabilitation facility encourages communication with friends who might provide perspective on harmful actions. Ginny asked if I would write to her. I agreed, but told her I would not lie about or minimize what she did to you. What does she say? Harry asked, unsure if he truly wanted to know but feeling compelled to ask nonetheless. She's beginning to understand, Luna said thoughtfully. The facility uses specialized magical therapies that allow patients to experience the effects of their actions from the victim's perspective. It's quite intense, apparently. Harry absorbed this information, trying to imagine Ginny experiencing even a fraction of the violation and confusion he had endured for months. Good, he said finally. She needs to understand why it was wrong, not just be told it was wrong. Exactly, Luna agreed. The therapeutic approach is based on developing empathy rather than simply imposing punishment. She's had to experience the fog of having her thoughts manipulated, the horror of realizing actions she thought were her own were actually influenced by outside forces. The poetic justice of this approach resonated with Harry. He had never wanted vengeance, only accountability and prevention. Does she? He hesitated, uncertain what he wanted to ask. Does she regret what she did? Luna considered the question carefully. She regrets it now, she said finally. But I believe she's still coming to terms with why she did it in the first place. The entitlement behind it, the belief that she had the right to override your choices because she knew better what you should feel, that's deeper and harder to dismantle. The insight was profound and unexpectedly helpful. Harry had struggled to understand how someone who claimed to care for him could systematically violate his autonomy hundreds of times. The concept of entitlement, of believing one had the right to override another's choices, clarified the mindset behind such actions. Thank you for telling me, Harry said sincerely. It helps, somehow, to understand the mentality behind it. Even if I can't forgive it yet. You may never forgive it, Luna observed without judgment. That's your choice to make, not an obligation you bear. Her simple affirmation of his right to withhold forgiveness felt liberating. So many people treated forgiveness as the inevitable conclusion to healing, but Luna acknowledged it as a separate choice entirely. They continued their walk around the lake, the conversation shifting to other topics, Luna's theories about winteractive magical creatures, plans for the next DA meeting, speculation about whether the house elves might serve pudding with dinner. The normalcy was comforting, another step in reclaiming ordinary pleasures that had been temporarily overshadowed by trauma. March arrived with warming temperatures and the first tentative signs of spring. As the snow receded, revealing patches of grass and early wildflowers, Harry found himself feeling a similar thawing, a gradual emergence from the protective emotional hibernation he had maintained during the worst of his recovery. His sessions with Healer Ainsworth had decreased to once weekly, focusing now on integration rather than acute healing. They discussed how to incorporate his experience into his broader life narrative without allowing it to become a defining feature of his identity. Many trauma survivors struggle with this balance, Ainsworth explained during one session. How to acknowledge what happened without becoming solely the person who was potioned or the victim of magical coercion. That's exactly it, Harry agreed. I don't want to be defined by what was done to me, but I can't pretend it didn't happen either. The goal is integration, acknowledging the experience as part of your life story while recognizing it's only one chapter, not the entire book. Ainsworth smiled slightly. From what I've observed, Harry, you have considerable practice at this already. Being the boy who lived, without allowing that label to consume your identity has prepared you well for this challenge. The parallel hadn't occurred to Harry, but it made sense. His entire life had involved balancing public perceptions against his private sense of self, finding ways to exist as just Harry amid constant reminders of his role in wizarding history. I suppose I've had practice at being more than my worst experiences, he acknowledged. Precisely. And that resilience serves you well now. As spring advanced, Harry found himself increasingly able to engage with previously triggering topics without distress. When Ron hesitantly mentioned receiving a letter from Ginny, Harry listened with genuine calm as his friend described her progress at the rehabilitation facility. She asked about you, Ron admitted, clearly uncomfortable. Not in a weird way, just, how you're doing. I didn't answer that part. It's okay if you did, Harry said, surprising himself with the realization that he meant it. She's still your sister. You're allowed to maintain that relationship. Ron looked relieved but shook his head. I wrote back, but I told her I wouldn't discuss you with her. That if she wants to know how you're doing, she'll have to earn back the right to that information through actions, not words. The maturity of Ron's response impressed Harry. His friend had come a long way from the initial confusion and divided loyalty he'd shown immediately after the incident. Thanks, Harry said simply. That means a lot. April brought Newt's preparation for the 7th year's and increasingly frantic OWL's revision for Harry's year. The academic pressure provided a welcome normalcy, a reminder that life continued beyond trauma and recovery. Harry threw himself into studying with unprecedented focus, finding satisfaction in the clear connection between effort and results, a refreshing contrast to the months when his thoughts and feelings had been manipulated beyond his control. During this period, he received another update from the ministry regarding the Love Potion Regulation Committee. The recommendations he had provided had been incorporated into draft legislation that would significantly restrict access to ingredients used in mind-altering potions, require licensing for brewing any consent-affecting substances, and increase penalties for their misuse. Most significantly, the proposed legislation included a mandatory educational component for Hogwarts and other wizarding schools, addressing the ethics of potions use with particular emphasis on consent and autonomy. The curriculum would become part of standard potions education, ensuring future generations understood the serious implications of substances previously treated as harmless pranks or romantic aids. Reading the report, Harry felt a deep satisfaction that transcended personal vindication. His traumatic experience was being transformed into systemic change that would protect others, a redemptive outcome from months of violation and suffering. He shared the news with Ron and Hermione during a study break by the lake, the three of them seated beneath their favorite beech tree as the April sunshine warmed the grounds. That's brilliant, Harry, Hermione said when he finished explaining the proposed changes. These regulations could fundamentally shift how the wizarding world views consent and autonomy. Ron nodded agreement. About time too. Dad says the old attitudes about love potions being harmless fun have been dangerous for generations. This could change everything. I hope so, Harry said, watching a group of first-years playing near the water's edge, their laughter carrying across the grounds. I keep thinking about those kids, how they'll grow up with different ideas about what's acceptable. Maybe they'll never have to experience what I did. The perspective felt healing, the ability to see beyond his personal pain to the broader implications for wizarding society. What had happened to him was awful, unforgivable even, but if it led to protection for others, some meaning could be extracted from the suffering. May brought a surprise visit from Arthur Weasley, who arrived at Hogwarts on a sunny Saturday to finalize the sale of the burrow. McGonagall informed Harry that Arthur had asked to see him, if he felt comfortable with such a meeting. They met in McGonagall's office, the Transfiguration professor discreetly excusing herself to give them privacy. Arthur looked both older and somehow lighter than when Harry had seen him at Christmas, the strain of recent months evident in new lines around his eyes, but a certain peace in his bearing that hadn't been present before. "Harry," he greeted warmly. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. I wouldn't have imposed, but I have news I wanted to share with you personally." "It's no imposition," Harry assured him truthfully. "How are you?" "Better than I might have expected," Arthur replied, settling into the chair McGonagall had vacated. "The Burrow sale is complete. A young wizarding family with 4 children will be moving in next month. It feels right, somehow, that the house will be filled with children again." The wistfulness in Arthur's voice was unmistakable, but not bitter. "Have you found a new place?" Harry asked. Arthur nodded, his expression brightening. "A small cottage near the coast in North Devon. Nothing grand, but it has a marvelous workshop for my muggle tinkering and a view of the sea that changes hourly with the weather. I'll be moving in next week." "That sounds perfect," Harry said, genuinely pleased for the man who had shown him such kindness over the years. "I think it will be," Arthur agreed. "A fresh start." He hesitated. "That's part of why I wanted to see you, actually. To thank you." Harry blinked in surprise. "Thank me? For what?" "For not giving up on all of us," Arthur said simply. "For visiting at Christmas, for maintaining friendships with Ron and the others despite having every reason to want nothing to do with any Weasley ever again." "They didn't do anything wrong," Harry pointed out. "It wouldn't have been fair to blame them for what Ginny and Mrs. Weasley did. Many people would have found it easier to cut ties completely," Arthur noted. "The fact that you didn't speaks to your character, Harry." They talked for nearly an hour, covering everything from Arthur's new cottage to the proposed love potion legislation to Ron's improved academic performance under Hermione's rigorous study schedule. The conversation flowed easily, both of them carefully navigating around direct mentions of Ginny or Molly while still acknowledging the reality of what had happened. As Arthur prepared to leave, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box. "I wanted to give you this," he said, placing it on the desk between them. "It's not much, but it has meaning." Harry opened the box carefully to find a pocket watch of burnished bronze, its face showing not only time but phases of the moon and planetary positions. "It's traditional in wizarding families to give a watch when a wizard comes of age," Arthur explained. "This one belonged to my grandfather. I had intended to pass it to Ron, but he'll receive Fabian Pruitt's watch from the family vault when he turns 17. The significance of the gesture wasn't lost on Harry. Arthur was offering him a family heirloom, an acknowledgement of his place in the older wizard's life despite the fracturing of the Weasley family. "Arthur, I can't accept this," Harry protested. "It should stay in your family." "You are family, Harry," Arthur said firmly. "Not by blood or by marriage, but by choice, the strongest bond of all. What Molly and Ginny did doesn't change that, unless you want it to." Tears pricked at Harry's eyes as he carefully lifted the watch from its box. The weight of it felt substantial in his palm, a tangible connection to generations of wizards who had come before. "Thank you," he said, his voice slightly hoarse with emotion. "I'll treasure it." As they said their goodbyes, Harry felt another piece of his healing journey fall into place. The watch represented not just Arthur's ongoing care but also the possibility of maintaining meaningful connections with the innocent Weasleys without diminishing the seriousness of what had been done to him by Ginny and Molly. The final weeks of term passed in a blur of examinations and end-of-year activities. Harry's OWLs went surprisingly well, his mind clearer and more focused than it had been all year. Healer Ainsworth attributed this improved cognitive function to the absence of Amortentia's subtle dampening effects on areas of his brain not directly related to his manufactured feelings for Ginny. "Love potions affect more than just romantic feelings," she explained during their final session. "They subtly redirect cognitive resources away from other functions to maintain the artificial attachment. With the potions gone and your system fully recovered, you're experiencing your natural intellectual capacity without that interference." This explanation resonated with Harry's experience throughout the examination period. Complex theories and transfiguration that had previously eluded him now seemed obvious. Potion ingredients and their interactions connected logically in his mind without the fog that had characterized his thinking for months. Beyond academics, Harry found himself increasingly comfortable with everyday social interactions. The hypervigilance that had characterized the early days after the incident had gradually diminished, replaced by a healthy caution that didn't interfere with normal activities. He still checked his food and drink with the twins' Revealer Plus, but the action had become routine rather than anxiety-driven, a simple precaution like locking a door at night. His relationships had evolved as well. Ron had grown into his role as a supportive friend, no longer walking on eggshells around Harry but also demonstrating a new maturity in how he handled difficult topics. Hermione remained his steadfast advocate and confidant, but their connection had deepened through the shared experience of the past months. Most surprisingly, Harry found himself developing new friendships with people who had previously been acquaintances at best. Neville had become a close ally, his quiet strength and loyalty proving invaluable during Harry's recovery. Luna's unconventional perspective offered insights that more conventional friends missed. Even Draco Malfoy maintained the civil, almost respectful attitude he had adopted after the incident, their mutual antagonism giving way to a wary neutrality that occasionally bordered on actual cooperation. The final evening before departure found Harry sitting by the lake, watching the giant squid's tentacles lazily breaking the water's surface as the setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Hermione joined him silently, settling on the grass beside him with a book she didn't open. "Last sunset of the term," she observed after a comfortable silence. Harry nodded, appreciating the symbolic weight of the moment. "Last sunset of a very long year. How are you feeling about going back to the Dursleys?" Hermione asked carefully. It was a valid concern. After everything Harry had experienced, returning to the cold hostility of Privet Drive seemed particularly harsh. "It's only for 2 weeks this time," Harry reminded her. "Dumbledore arranged for me to go to Grimmauld Place after that, to help Remus and Sirius with renovations." This plan had been a concession from the headmaster, an acknowledgement that after the trauma Harry had endured, minimizing additional stress was important for his continued recovery. The blood protection from staying with the Dursleys would be renewed with a minimal visit, after which Harry would spend the bulk of the summer with his godfather and former professor. Still, 2 weeks with them after everything else. Hermione's concern was evident. Harry shrugged slightly. "Oddly enough, I think I'm better equipped to handle the Dursleys now than I was before. Healer Ainsworth helped me develop strategies for dealing with difficult situations without internalizing them." It was true. The therapeutic techniques he had learned for processing his experience with love potions translated effectively to managing the emotional impact of the Dursleys' treatment. He could recognize their behavior as a reflection of their own prejudices and fears rather than any genuine deficiency in himself, a perspective that would make the brief stay more bearable than in previous years. Besides, he added with a small smile, after surviving months of being systematically potioned without my knowledge, 2 weeks with Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia seems almost manageable. Hermione returned his smile, though her eyes remained concerned. "You'll write if it gets too difficult. And use the telephone I showed you how to work last summer." "Promise," Harry assured her. "But I'll be fine, Hermione. Really." As darkness fell around them, stars appearing in the deepening blue of the evening sky, Harry reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. From the moment his magic had violently rejected Ginny's kiss in the Gryffindor common room to this peaceful lakeside sunset, he had traversed a landscape of betrayal, pain, healing, and ultimately, reclamation. He was not the same person he had been before the love potions, perhaps no one could be after such a fundamental violation. But neither was he defined or diminished by what had been done to him. He had reclaimed his autonomy, his authentic emotions, his trust in his own perceptions. He had maintained meaningful connections while establishing healthier boundaries. He had transformed personal trauma into advocacy for systemic change. Most importantly, he had learned that his core self, the essence of who Harry Potter truly was, remained stronger than any potion, any manipulation, any violation. His magic had known the truth when his conscious mind couldn't recognize it, had fought to protect him when nothing else could, had finally broken through hundreds of doses of the most powerful love potion in existence to reject what was false and reveal what was true. In that knowledge lay not just healing but power, the power of authenticity, of autonomy, of a self reclaimed from those who had sought to override it. As Harry gazed up at the star-filled sky above Hogwarts, he carried that power within him like a shield, a protection stronger than any potion could ever overcome. The journey wasn't over. Healing rarely followed a neat, linear path to a definitive conclusion. There would still be difficult days, painful memories, moments of anger or doubt. But Harry faced them now from a position of strength rather than victimization, his path forward illuminated by the light of his own reclaimed truth. When he finally rose to return to the castle, the watch Arthur had given him heavy in his pocket, Harry carried with him the certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, whether from Voldemort, from lingering trauma, or from the ordinary complexities of life, he would face them as himself, wholly and authentically. After everything that had been taken from him, that reclamation was perhaps the most profound victory of all. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.